The 55th session of the Senate and the second regular session of the 18th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Pampilo Ping Lacson will lead the chamber in prayer.
God Almighty, on this International Women's Day, we pray for all the women in the world and the roles that they play for all humanity. Not only do we see in them the image of thy mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary, but also the beauty of her compassion and eternal love. Grant us thy mercy and wisdom to respect and protect the weak against the wickedly strong as we walk unto your path of righteousness and glory. This we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Let's remain standing for the singing of the Philippine national anthem.
Kayang magiging dalas ng silanganan, alam na puso, sa kanyang mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tulad ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulubi, di ka masisihin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong buka, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang istak ng wala at mo'y tagumpay na nagsihilig, ang bituin at araw niyang kailan ang may di magdidilig. Lupa ng araw na ating pagsinta, buhay namin sa tiling mo. Ang ligaya dapat may malabi, ang mamatay na dahil sa'yo.
The secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara,
Present.
Binay,
Present.
Cayetano,
Present.
De Lima, De La Rosa, Rilon,
Present.
Gatchalian,
Present.
Go,
Present. Present po.
Perdon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos,
Present.
Pacquiao,
Asan yung Ilocano?
Pangilinan,
Present.
Unmute na naman, yung mute. Tawagin mo si Dayan para mag-stay.
Tell the third, Poe,
Present.
Present ako.
Recto,
Present.
Revilla Jr.,
Present.
Tolentino,
Present.
Villanueva, Villar,
Present.
Zubiri.
Present.
Senate President Soto III is present.
With 6 senators physically present and 16 senators virtually present for a total of 22, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, move that we dispense with the reading of the journals of the 53rd session Tuesday, March 2, 2021, and the 54th session Wednesday, March 3, 2021, and consider them as approved, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? There is none. The journals are approved.
Mr. President, I see the hands of Senator Gordon being raised. Mr. President, may we recognize the good gentleman from Zambales.
How was
Senator Gordon is recognized.
I tried to say present, but I don't think I was marked.
We did not hear, the secretary did not hear the response. So there are 23 senators present.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
I move, before I just like to remind everyone, we'll have third reading after the reference of business, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 2 March 2021, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7174, an act prohibiting the active use and display of commercial billboards during typhoons.
Referred to the Committee on Public Works.
House number 7814, an act strengthening drug prevention and control, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9165 as amended, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002.
Referred to the Committees on Public Order, Health, and Finance.
And House number 8741, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Franciscan Broadcasting Corporation under Public Act number 8736, entitled an act granting the Franciscan Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio broadcasting stations anywhere in the Philippines where frequencies and/or channels are still available for radio broadcasting.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 March 2021, it passed the following House bills in which it requests concurrence of the Senate. House number 8668, an act establishing a general hospital in the municipality of Villanueva, province of Misamis Oriental, to be known as the Northeastern Misamis General Hospital, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Committees on Health and Finance.
House number 8758, an act converting the San Jose District Hospital in the municipality of San Jose, province of Occidental Mindoro, into a general hospital to be known as the Southern Occidental Mindoro General Hospital, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Health and Finance.
House number 8759, an act establishing in the municipality of Limay, province of Bataan, a general hospital to be known as the Limay General Hospital, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Health and Finance.
House number 8726, an act establishing in the municipality of Nabua, Riconada District, province of Camarines Sur, a technical education skills development authority test the training and assessment center to be known as the Riconada Camarines Sur Test the Training and Assessment Center, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 8728, an act establishing the city of Ligao, province of Albay, a technical education skills development authority test the training and assessment center to be known as the Ligao City Albay Test the Training and Assessment Center, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 8729, an act establishing the municipality of Jordan, province of Guimaras, a technical education skills development authority test the provincial training and assessment center to be known as the Guimaras Test the Provincial Training and Assessment Center, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 8753, an act granting the Happy Jockey Club Inc. a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a racetracks for horse racing in the provinces of Batangas, Laguna, and Cavite.
To the Committees on Public Services and Games and Amusements.
Now, House number 8755, an act granting Sulu Tawi-Tawi Broadcasting Foundation Incorporated a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television stations in the provinces of Sulu and Tawi-Tawi.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2084, an act requiring dentists, dental hygienists, and dental technologists to keep patient dental records, repealing for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1575, otherwise known as the law requiring practitioners of dentistry to keep records of their patients, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Civil Service and Justice and Finance.
Senate number 2085, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Daniel Hongju introduced by Senator Angara.
To the Committee on Rules.
Senate number 2086, an act establishing the Philippine Geriatric Center under the Department of Health and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committees on Health and Finance.
Senate number 2087, an act instituting a policy on blood-borne viral hepatitis testing and screening, introduced by Senator Go.
To the Committees on Health, Labor, and Finance.
Resolution, PS Resolution number 673, resolution commemorating the 2021 celebration of International Women's Day on March 8, introduced by Senator Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communication letter from the Office of the President of the Philippines transmitting to the Senate 2 original copies of Republic Act number 11525 entitled An Act Establishing the Coronavirus Disease 2019 COVID-19 Vaccination Program, expediting the vaccine procurement and administration process, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, which was signed by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
To the Archives. We have additional reference to business.
Additional reference of business, bill on first reading, Senate number 2088, entitled An Act to Ensure Gender Responsive and Inclusive Protocols and Programming to Address the Gender Differentiated Needs of Women during COVID-19 and Other Public Health Concerns, Emergencies, and Disasters. Introduced by Senators Ontiveros, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Marcos, Poe, and Villar.
To the Committees on Women, Health, and Finance.
Resolutions, PS Resolution number 674, resolution honoring the late Father Joaquin G. Bernas, SJJSD, for his immeasurable and invaluable contributions to the legal profession and society, and expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the untimely demise of the best-known authority on the Constitution and one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution number 675, resolution honoring the life dedicated to service and glory of God of Constitutionalist Father Joaquin Bernas S.J. and expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on his passing, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have two measures for approval on third reading. Yes. We'd like to recognize Senator Bato de la Rosa, Mr. President, before the third reading, as he'd like to give a manifestation.
Senator Ronald De La Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to make a full disclosure before I cast my vote on the said measure that my wife is a cacao grower in her native province of Davao Occidental. Although hindi pa kumikita, Mr. President, because 1 year old pa lang yung kanyang cacao na tinanim. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. We place that on record. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We welcome the full disclosure of our dear colleague. With that, Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading Senate Bill number 1741 and ask the Secretary to proceed with the roll call vote, Mr. President.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senate Bill number 1741, an act declaring the city of Davao as the chocolate capital of the Philippines and the entire Region 11, Davao Region, as the cacao capital of the Philippines. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara,
Yes.
Binay,
Yes. Yes.
Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa,
Sorry, yes, yes.
Cayetano, yes. De La Rosa, abstain. Trilon,
Yes.
Gatchalian,
Yes.
Go,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
yes. Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos,
Yes.
Pacquiao,
Yes.
Pangilinan,
Yes.
Pimentel III,
Yes.
Poe,
Yes.
Recto,
Yes.
Revilla Jr.,
Yes.
Tolentino,
Yes.
Villanueva, Villar,
Yes.
Zubiri,
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
With the assurance of Senator Villar that the Senate version will be upheld, I vote yes.
Abstain.
Sino yung nag-abstain? With 22 affirmative votes, no negative votes, 1 abstention, Senate Bill 1741 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Cayetano and Senator Pangilinan as well as Senator Villar after. Senator Cayetano first.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd just like to explain my vote. I vote yes because I share Her Honor's, the sponsor's desire to acknowledge the effort of the farmers and the local governments of the Davao region in the effort that they have put in to promote cacao. However, I need to put on record my concern that a measure like this may prove to do the opposite, which is, in other words, instead of incentivizing, may be a disincentive to the other regions because they may likewise be trying hard, and yet, you know how it is. If somebody is already considered number one, um, there may not be as much incentive to try hard and to be number two. And that is why my proposal was really to have some kind of hall of fame wherein those who do stellar performance could be acknowledged over a period of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and it gives a real reason for those to catch up if they want to also be acknowledged. So I do have grave concerns, Mr. President, on declaring regions or cities or LGUs as a capital, especially when we are still in the developing stage of our agriculture. I would like to request the committee to review this policy, perhaps to rephrase it in the future as a like I said, something like a hall of fame, wherein later on the respective the agency would then be the one to determine based on a set of factors, so that we can be more scientific in our approach, and it can truly be a way to incentivize. On that note, I already voted yes, but I hope Her Honor the good sponsor would take into consideration these concerns of this humble representative. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief manifestation of our yes vote that we would like this representation, Mr. President, would like to associate himself with the earlier manifestation of the Senate President when he voted in favor of this measure, that there is this assurance from the chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, that the Senate version will be the version that we will be, or at least will be ratifying when the bicameral conference committee report is presented to us, mainly because the House version has incentives being provided for Davao region and Davao City, which precisely is one of the concerns raised by the industry. And the Senate version does not have these incentives. So for the record, Mr. President, this is the explanation as well of our vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, the Majority Leader.
Yes, ma'am. Sir,
yes,
finally,
Villar.
Senator Villar.
Yes, Senator Villar is recognized.
I wish to thank the Senate for passing SB 1741, declaring Davao City as chocolate capital of the Philippines, and Region 11, Davao Region, as the cacao capital of the Philippines. I wish to reassure you that I will keep up my word of honor to you. And at the same time, I will consider your manifestation in the coming bills coming from the House, because they are all coming from the House. They are local bills, and we just follow with certain revisions their version of the bill. And of course, I wish to thank Senate President Soto and Senate Pro Tempore Recto, Senate Majority Floor Leader Mick Subiri, and the majority senators, especially Senator Bato de la Rosa and Senator Bongo, who are co-sponsor and co-author of the bill, Senator Angara, Villanueva, Binay, Bong Revilla, Senator Gatchalian, Gordon, Marcos, Cayetano, Senator Tolentino, Pacquiao, Pimentel, Lacson, Senators Poe, Lapid, and the minority floor leader Drilon, and Senators Pangilinan and Hontiveros. I wish also to acknowledge the help of the Department of Agriculture, at maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. It's just that there are bills coming from the House that are like this. Then in the future, I will ask you how we will phrase it so you will be satisfied. Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Majority Leader, is seeking the floor. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize that I wasn't able to make myself seen earlier. I would have wanted to allow the good sponsor to make the last manifestation at this point. But just for the record, Mr. President, I join with the Senate President and my colleague in the minority, Senator Kiko, to make it of record by way of explanation that I join with their own explanation of vote and count as well on the word of honor of the good sponsor. For the record, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The second item on the agenda, but before we proceed on this second item, we'd like to recognize Senator Win Gatchalian for a short manifestation. I believe he would like to be made co-author. Is that correct, Senator Gatchalian? I got a message from your staff.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
That's for the BFP bill. Sorry, Majority Floor.
Yes.
It's not for this bill.
We're tackling, that's right. Before we vote on third reading, I believe you'd like to make the
yes,
manifestation.
Yes. I would like to manifest to be a co-author of the strengthening of the BFP bill. Thank you, Majority Floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
You. For the record, Mr. President. With that.
All right, Majority Leader.
Thank you. With that, Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading Senate Bill number 1832. Ask the Secretary to read the title and proceed with the roll call vote, sir.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senate Bill number 1832, an act strengthening and modernizing the Bureau of Fire Protection and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Roll call vote. Honorable Senators Angara,
Yes.
Binay,
Yes.
Cayetano,
Yes, but I'd like to explain my vote later. Thank you.
De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon,
Yes.
Gatchalian,
Yes.
Go,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos,
Yes.
Pacquiao,
Yes.
Pangilinan,
Yes.
Pimentel III,
Yes.
Poe,
Yes.
Recto,
Yes.
Revilla Jr.,
Yes.
Tolentino,
Yes.
Villanueva, Villar,
Yes.
Zubiri,
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
Yes. With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, Senate Bill 1832 is approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, two of our colleagues wish to...
Senator De La Rosa
Yes,
is recognized.
May you recognize Senator De La Rosa, Mr. President.
Senator De La Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, napapanahon na ang pag-aproba ng Senado sa BFP Modernization Act ngayong buwan ng Marso na noong 1966 sa bisa ng Presidential Proclamation number 115-A Series of 1966 ay idineklara bilang Fire Prevention Month. This year's theme is sa pag-iwas sa sunog, di ka nag-iisa, Mr. President. Sa pagpasa po natin ng panukalang batas na ito, ang nabanggit na tema ay magiging realidad na. Sa ating magigiting na mga bumbero, hindi po kayo nag-iisa. Ang Senado ay inyong kasama. Mr. President, we will not allow the BFP to prevent and suppress destructive fires alone. Sa tulong ng Senate Bill number 1832, masisiguro natin na magkakaroon ng sapat na fire officers, fire trucks, personal protective equipment at ibang equipment na kailangan para maapula ang mga nakakamatay na sunog. Bukod pa rito, mas magagampanan ng BFP ang kanilang tungkuling bilang first responder sa mga sakuna, aksidente at iba pang emergency. Mr. President, allow me to thank the authors of this life-saving legislation, Senator Bongo, Senate President Soto, at Senator Revilla, kasama ng mga co-authors na sina Senators Cayetano, Tolentino, Angara, Po, Pacquiao, Zuberi, Recto, Villanueva, Marcos, at Villar. Likewise, Mr. President, allow me to thank our minority floor leader, Senator Drilon, for his invaluable inputs and support for the passage of this bill. I also would like to extend my profound gratitude to Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Recto, for introducing amendments that will ensure sustainable funding for the modernization program, as well as amendments introduced by Senator Gatchalian to improve coordination between the BFP and local government units. Also, amendments from Senator Villanueva on providing training for the Emergency Medical Service Unit of the BFP and BFP volunteers from Senator Gordon. Ang pagpapapasa po ng panukalang batas na ito ay unang hakbang sa patuloy na pagmomodernisa ng BFP. Makakaasa po ang ating mga kababayan na ating babantayan at titiyakin ang magiging maayos ang pagpapatupad sa batas na ito. We will also ensure that our annual national budget will include sufficient funds for the program projects of the BFP for their modernization program. Muli po, sa tulong ng Kongreso, maisa sa katuparan na ang ating pangarap na lahat ng bayan sa buong Pilipinas ay magkakaroon na ng sariling fire truck at fire station. Wala na sana tayo makikita bumbirong kulang sa protective equipment habang lumalaban sa nakamamatay na sunog. Wala na sana tayong mababalitaang namatay dahil walang nagresponde na ambulansya sa mga sakuna. Sulit po ang ilang beses na pagpapa-PCR test ng mga opisyal ng BFP sa pangunguna ni Chief Imbang para makapag-backstop dito sa Senado. Dagdag na sakripisyo ito para sa kanilang mahal na ahensya, ngunit di maikukumpara sa di masusukat na pagmamahal nila para sa ating mga kababayan. Sa atin po mga dakilang bumbero, maraming salamat po sa inyong paglilingkod. Huwag sana kayong mapapagod sa inyong pagmamahal sa ating bayan. Continue to be an inspiration, and in your hearts, keep the fire burning. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. At this juncture, I would like to thank and congratulate our idol, Chairperson of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Senator Bato de la Rosa, for ably sponsoring, Mr. President, and defending this measure and for accepting all our amendments. I fully support the modernization and strengthening of the Bureau of Fire Protection. Our firemen are known to charge without second thoughts towards areas struck by fire and other disasters and calamities. However, Mr. President, at present, they continue to be under-equipped and desperately understaffed. Literal na sinusunog natin sila sa apoy kung patuloy na hindi mapapalakas ang BFP. This is a bigger challenge considering that BFP is a member of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council and also plays a role in handling emergencies not related to fire incidents. According to most studies, the ideal fireman to population ratio is 1:2,000. With Filipino population estimated at 110 million in 2021, this means that we should have at least 55,000 firemen and women to reach the target. However, data from DBM shows that total civilian and uniformed plantilla personnel in BFP for 2021 is only 27,968. This means that we need to double our current BFP workforce just to meet the ideal workforce. The deliberations in the Senate also exposed the worrisome level of access to Filipinos to fire safety and response facilities. One, not all of the 1,715 municipalities, cities, and provinces in the country have their own fire stations. Two, not all of those fire stations are operational. Three, not all those operational fire stations have their own emergency medical services. And lastly, not all those EMS units have their own serviceable ambulance, trained crew, and apparatus for emergency medical services. We believe that the modernization of the BFP is not all about infrastructure and equipment, but also about investing in our workforce. As we showed during our interpellation, over 10 battalions of firemen and women today are nursing graduates. Napakalaki po, Ginoong Pangulo, ang potensyal na gawing base manpower ng isang National Emergency Medical Service ang BFP. The amendments that we introduced, which the sponsor graciously accepted, seek to strengthen the human resource development aspects of this measure, specifically in ensuring, Mr. President, that each EMS or emergency medical services unit to be established shall be comprised of ambulance with adequate medical equipment and qualified and trained personnel, such as but not limited to ambulance crew and drivers, and that they are provided adequate skills training with the help of relevant agencies like DOH and TESDA. Muli, Ginoong Pangulo, maraming salamat, mabuhay ang Senado, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I believe Senator Cayetano also wanted to explain her vote.
Senator,
Pia Cayetano.
we don't see the video of Senator Cayetano, but we have unmuted her. Senator Cayetano, you're recognized. She's not online.
Yes, Mr. President. Well, let's move forward then. Maybe we can recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Senator Richard Gordon's recognized.
Mr. President, just a manifestation. I thought I had already manifested that I was going to be co-author. If the gentleman from Davao will permit it, I'd like to be a co-author.
Yes, I believe you are already a co-author, Mr. President. This is a good gentleman from Zambales. But let's just to be sure, Mr. President, for the record, Senator Gordon had already manifested earlier, or a few days back prior, that he's co-author of the BFP measure. For the record.
All right, thank you. Senator Pia Cayetano is now on. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make this brief. My sole concern really here is similar to Senator Joel Villanueva's, that we take a big look at the bigger picture. Take a look at the bigger picture on our healthcare needs, because the provision on the EMS, the emergency medical services, might overlap, but we can work it out in such a way that we make use of the huge pool of health human resources that we already have. I leave it to the gentleman, the good sponsor, to ensure that there are no replications of duties, that the already trained in 4 years of nursing school students may possibly be tapped. And in other words, simply to ensure that we maximize our health human resource and not start from scratch when we already have this abundant resource at our fingertips. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Majority
President.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two of our colleagues who wish to avail of the privileged hour, Mr. President. May we recognize our distinguished colleague, Chair of the Committee on Agriculture, no other than our colleague from Las Piñas, Senator Cynthia Villar, Mr. President.
Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized. In the EDP, unmute her. Ayan na. All right. Go ahead.
Yan na naman. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, now, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. And I wish to deliver this speech as chairman of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, not as a chairman of Committee on Agriculture, although it is related also. Anyway, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, arise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. Last week on March 3, World Wildlife Day was celebrated. It was designated as such in 1973 during the 66th session of the United Nations General Assembly in commemoration of the adoption of CITES, or the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. The theme of this year's celebration was Forest and Livelihood, Sustaining People and Planet. It focuses on the links between the state of our planet's forests and woodlands and the preservation of the million of livelihoods that depend directly on them, highlighting the traditional knowledge of the communities, including or particularly indigenous people, very relevant during these times as well as for our country. This representation, as all of you here, of course, support the conservation of wildlife, which is all-encompassing goal of the World Wildlife Day. Among the efforts I have exerted as a legislator and environmentalist myself is pursuing the conservation and protection of places such as rivers and wetlands, which are critical habitats of various species, many of which are threatened by human development and what we call progress. What makes the issue even more important to our country is the fact that the Philippines is one of the world's 17 megadiverse or biodiversity-rich countries, which host two-thirds of the Earth biodiversity and contain about 70 to 80% of the world's plant and animal species. We need to not only create awareness about biological diversity, but to take action about its protection, because any damage or loss will cost too much for a country such as ours. There is so much at stake, and we become vulnerable to the adverse side effects if we do not commit to taking care of our environment. We need to be more vigilant against biodiversity loss, wildlife protection, conservation of their habitats, and related issues or concern. The Philippines is biodiversity rich, but is also among the world's biodiversity hotspots, or those areas experiencing high rates of habitat loss. Hotspots have lost around 86% of their original habitat and are also considered to be significantly threatened by extinctions induced by climate change. Many areas in the country remain underprotected. These include wetlands, marine sanctuaries, tropical forests, among others. That is why I also pursued the amendment of Republic Act RA 7586, or the National Integrated Protected Area System, or NIPAS Act, which was passed into law in 1992. The Act provides the legal framework for the establishment and management of protected areas in the country. NIPAS refers to the classification and administration of all designated protected areas to preserve genetic diversity and to maintain their natural conditions to the greatest extent possible. We successfully passed RA 11038, or the Expanded NIPAS Act, or eNIPAS, in 2018 to include more areas. Under the operation of the original NIPAS law, 13 sites were individually legislated as protected areas. The expanded NIPAS law facilitated the legislation of 94 more protected areas, bringing the country's total legislated protected areas to 107. 11 of these protected areas are internationally recognized. 8 are ASEAN heritage sites, namely the Mount Apo, the Mount Kitanlad, the Mount Malindang, Mount Hihamigitan, Mount Timpoong, Hibok-Hibok, Mang Iglid Bako, the Tubataha Reef, and the Agusan Mars. The protected area Turtle Islands Wildlife Sanctuary is part of the Turtle Island Heritage Protected Area, which is a transboundary protected area shared by Malaysia and the Philippines. 4 of these protected areas are Ramsar sites, namely Agusan Mars, Tubataha Reef, which is both part of the ASEAN Heritage Sites also, Olango Island in Cebu, and Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park here in Metro Manila. The more natural habitats we protect, the lesser the loss in biodiversity, and the better it is for wildlife and, of course, people to survive and thrive. Our population, particularly rural and indigenous people, depend on natural resources for food and income. That is relevant also to the theme of this year's World Wildlife Day. The United Nations itself cited that over 800 million people live in tropical forests and woodlands in developing countries. Indigenous and local communities who are also considered as historic custodians of the planet's more important reservoir of biodiversity. Rely on them for their essential needs for food, shelter, and medicines, among others. The various conservationists and environmentalists who joined the celebration of World Wildlife Day on March 3 emphasized the livelihood aspect of this year's theme, forests and livelihood, sustaining people and planet. We share the habitat of wildlife, that's we are both sustained by them too. Destruction of those habitats translate to loss of livelihood and economic opportunities for people. That was one of the points I cited when years ago I stood here before you also defending the destruction from a planned reclamation of a critical habitat in my home city of Las Piñas, the Las Piñas Parañaque Critical Habitat and Ecotourism Area, or what we know now as the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park. It threatened to disrupt the livelihood of thousands of fisher folks and urban poor who depend on the wetland for their daily sustenance. Back then, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources cited a study conducted by the National Fisheries Development Institute that cited the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park as a hotspot for spawning in the eastern part of Manila Bay, and the volume of fish eggs laid is the highest in that area. Ayon mismo sa mga mangingisda at mga fisher folks group, napakaraming yamang tubig ang kanilang na-harvest sa Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park. Ilan sa mga ito ay mga tilapia, tahong, hipon, alimango, alimasag, talangka, kanduli, dalagang bukid, banak, halaan, tulya, gulaman, salinyasi at iba pa. Ang mga ito ay bumubuo sa supply ng isda sa Cavite at Southern Metro Manila at iba pang yamang tubig sa buong Camanava, which is Caloocan, Malabon, Navotas, and Valenzuela City, at pati na rin sa Bulacan. Kung nagkataon, hindi lang mga mangingisda ang apektado, pati na rin ang mga tao sa mga nabanggit na lugar dahil maaari itong magdulot ng shortage of fish or seafood supply. I just wanted to cite that as an example of the link between livelihood and natural habitat. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources Biodiversity Management Bureau, which is the CITES Management Authority of the Philippines for terrestrial species, implements a program that deals with the conservation and protection of wildlife and/or maintenance, restoration, and enhancement of their habitats pursuant to RA 9147. Priority activities under this program are the following: sustainable wildlife resource use, management of invasive alien species, and enforcement of wildlife laws, rules, and regulation, which include the operations, mobilization of wildlife traffic monitoring units, deputation of mobilization of wildlife enforcement officers, operation and maintenance of wildlife rescue centers, establishment and management of critical habitats, and conservation of threatened wildlife species such as but not limited to the marine turtles, dugong, damaraw, Philippine eagle, freshwater and saltwater crocodile, tarsier, Philippine cockatoo, and the Visayan spotted deer. DNR-BNB sees the need for stricter laws on wildlife conservation and protection. Last week, Mr. President, in time for the observance of World Wildlife Day, I have filed Senate Bill number 2078, or the Revised Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act of 2021. This bill seeks to strengthen the wildlife conservation and protection mechanism in our country by amending the 20-year-old RA number 9147. The Philippines joined and ratified the CITES in 1981, and as such, the Philippine government has the obligation, among others, to adopt its own national laws applying the provision of the CITES, such as prohibiting the trade of wildlife in violation of the convention, imposing penalties for violation, and confiscating illegally traded specimens, all of which are under Republic Act number 9147, or the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act, that was passed into law in 2001. RA number 9147 is a measure that provided the necessary environmental policy enabling Philippine government to manage and conserve the wildlife resources of the country comprehensively. RA 9147 included a list of illegal acts that are considered detrimental to wildlife with corresponding penalties such as imprisonment or fines or both, that are intended to serve as deterrent for violative acts against wildlife and their habitats. In fairness, since its implementation, the Philippine Enforcement Authority were able to apprehend perpetrators of wildlife offenses. The more recent ones reported in the news include the seizure of 447 exotic animals in Mati City, Davao Oriental, valued at 50 million pesos in April 2019. The seizure in March 2019 of 1,529 live exotic turtles inside an abandoned luggage at the NAIA Terminal 2. And in July 2018, a truckload of banned wildlife meat composed of 21 frozen pangolins and 16 sea turtles was confiscated at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources checkpoint in Puerto Princesa. But admittedly, while there were successful arrests of wildlife violators and confiscation of wildlife specimens over the year, there are many other violations that remain rampant and even undetected. Furthermore, the incidence of wildlife crimes has evolved and grown. Violators have become more equipped, organized, and syndicated, or with international connections. Likewise, the trade and transport of wildlife species have become wide-scale and transnational in nature. Thus, we need to give more teeth, so to speak, to existing policies and laws to further empower enforcement authorities to apprehend violator. And that's what Senate Bill 2078 seeks to provide, to fortify the mechanism in place to afford better protection to our wildlife resources. The need to protect our wildlife resources finds critical relevance now as we continue to battle the ill effects of COVID-19 virus. We have gathered that there were researches indicating that the constant exploitation of wild fauna and their habitats, mostly through human action, had the effect of raising the risk of zoonotic disease transmission or the transmission of disease from animal to human. For instance, when humans destroy the natural habitats of wild animals, the latter may be constrained to transfer to location where the humans live. Destruction of natural habitat has been linked to the spread of infectious diseases such as Ebola, HIV, swine fever, and avian flu. More than two-thirds of these diseases originate in animals, and about 70% come from wild animals, or what is referred to as zoonotic diseases. According to the Wildlife Conservation Society, habitat loss forces animals to move to areas populated by people who become exposed to the pathogens of animals that in turn spread viruses. Scientists cited as example the Nipah virus outbreak in Malaysia in the late 1990s. Deforestation drove fruit bats to transfer from their natural habitat to trees in pig farms. The pigs came into contact with bat droppings and became infected. The pigs then infected farmers. Another example is the hunting of wild animals and eating them afterwards. And third, the interaction of human and wild animal is greatly increased in cases of illegal wildlife trade. There were studies suggesting that COVID-19 virus may have originated from bats and that the first people infected were traders in the bat meat, who may have subsequently visited the Yunnan seafood market where the virus spread was first traced. Dr. Dong Yu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, or UNFAO, cited that the growing demand for wild meat, especially in urban setting, is increasing humans' exposure to zoonotic diseases and hunting pressure in forests. Wild meat is an essential source of food for millions of indigenous and rural people, accounting for more than 50% of protein intake in many tropical and subtropical regions. But unless hunting and consumption are conducted in a sustainable manner, that supply will gradually diminish with serious implications for food security. Already, recent studies estimate that 285 mammal species are threatened with extinction due to hunting for wild meat. Indeed, illegal wildlife trade and unsustainable hunting and consumption are just two of the main threats and challenges that confront wildlife protection all over the world. Many countries have in fact tightened their own policies and laws to protect and save their own wildlife from extinction and other threats. Most of their efforts and action have been successful and effective in fact. The Philippines, a mega-diverse or biodiversity rich, should be leading the way or the most proactive and vigilant in the area of conservation and protection. Our wildlife protection law is over 2 decades old and as such needs to be amended and revised to be more attuned to the needs and challenges of the present times. As I cited earlier, there is so much at stake for a country such as ours, and we run the risk of irreparable damages, consequences, and losses. Our concerted and timely action will save not only wildlife, but our lives too, because we share one home and one planet. As legislator, the best we can do is to pass relevant and proactive law, as well as to keep reviewing or assessing the relevance of existing law, such as Republic Act number 9147 or Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act of 2001. As this representation is done, the amendments to which are proposed on Senate Bill 2078. As in any environmental issue, problem, concern, or goal, our concerted efforts are crucial. It is good that people now, more than ever, are realizing that progress need not be at the expense of the environment and those who inhabit it. That is really worth emphasizing. We owe it to the future generation. It's part of our duty to leave this world better than we found it. Let us make sure that the future generation will still see real wildlife or animal species, not just in pictures, because at the rate of extinction and decline in their population is really alarming. My guiding philosophy in carrying out my environmental advocacy is a Native American proverb that says, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." Protecting this planet we call home in the best of our capacity is a legacy that we can and we should all leave behind. That truly matters more than anything else. With that, thank you, Mr. Senate President and dear colleagues. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you,
President.
Senator Villar.
Mr. President.
Senator, the Senator Pia Cayetano is seeking the floor here.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. President. Yes.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to congratulate Her Honor, the committee chair of the Committee on Agriculture and the Committee on Environment. And with her permission, may I just spread into the record some of my observations, some of my own research, which are consistent with Her Honors.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will proceed. Mr. President, as I said, I'd like to commend Her Honor for bringing up this very important matter. As soon as we started talking about it, obviously I was reminded of the time that I was chairman of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources from 2004 to 2010, and I think shortly after. But more importantly, Mr. President, is I wanted to align Her Honor's speech with our current situation, although she already touched on it, but I also did the very quick research because this has been my concern now that I am also the chairman of our Senate Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking. Mr. President, in an article published by CNBC, they state that habitat destruction like deforestation and agricultural development on wildlands are increasingly forcing disease-carrying wild animals closer to humans, allowing new strains of infectious disease to thrive. Scientists say that the coronavirus pandemic is the most recent instance of how human degradation of wildlife habitat is linked to the spread of infectious disease. And preserving habitats for wildlife and preserving our world is a human health issue, according to Tierra Smiley Evans, an epidemiologist of the University of California. I wanted to emphasize the link between the importance of preserving our wildlife and our health care, the link between the destruction of their habitat and the pandemic that we are experiencing today, Mr. President. I think now more than ever, we should really look into these laws that we passed and its implementation. I'd like to share one incident at the height of, in the early days of the pandemic, maybe this was around April or May. I heard that I already heard of this before. But what I heard was, if your honors will recall, a lot of stores were still closed, and the report was that there were wildlife animals in cages in Cartimar. And because they were closed, naririnig daw sa gabi yung mga growls, moans, and whatever sounds that these wildlife are making in their cages in stores in Cartimar. So I'm not familiar with it. I'm not a wildlife collector. In fact, I know that this is prohibited by law. But apparently, so many people know about this. And I wonder why
we are allowing this wildlife collection to flourish in the heart of Metro Manila. So Her Honor's timing is, for me, very well timed, and I truly believe that the bill that she mentioned along with this bill, I do hope Her Honor will carry on with a hearing. In fact, I would like to request that the Committee on SDG be also a second referral, because this actually touches Her Honor's privileged speech actually touches on so many SDGs, no? Obviously, sustainable communities and cities are covered. When we talk about communities, they could be rural or they could be urban, and all of them are affected. Her Honor said that she is delivering the speech as a chairperson of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. However, at the same time, she also touched on how this problem that we have with the wildlife management affects our agricultural supply, and at the end of the day affects our food security. So this very much affects SDG 2 on zero hunger, because agriculture is a big component. SDG 3 on good health, again, I already established that it's very much this pandemic is very much related to that. And then decent work and economic growth, because many people will not have the ability to find decent work if we continue to be in a pandemic like this, which is brought about by our failure to address the impact of our lifestyles on wildlife. And I already mentioned SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. Of course, SDG 13, which is climate action, and SDG 14 and 15, which is life below waters and life on land. And finally, SDG 17, which is partnerships, because I truly believe that we need to address this problem, not from a whole of nation approach, national government, local government, and private parties. So that is my intervention, and I again congratulate the good sponsor for bringing it up, and I hope that she will continue this topic in hearings in her committee at the soonest possible time. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President, if I may also be recognized, I'd just like to put on record my congratulations to the chairperson of the Committee on Natural Resources. First of all, for bringing up this advocacy on wildlife conservation. Mr. President, for the record, many of our colleagues probably don't know this. I'm the principal author of Republic Act 9147. I was the chair of the Committee on Natural Resources in the House in 2001 when we approved this. And I actually worked this bill together with Dr. Mondita Lim, who used to be the head of PAUB that time. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, she would joke me na, totoo talaga, ipapasa mo ito? Sabi ko, ipapasa ko yan. So, binasa po namin after many years of attempt to pass it in Congress in 2001. That was my first term, Mr. President. I'm very, very proud of that measure, Republic Act 9147, the Wildlife Conservation Act. And time has come for us to revisit it, Mr. President. It's been 20 years. Maraming palusot na rin na nangyayari sa ginagawa nila mga provisions ng batas. I think we now know how to correct these deficiencies in the law. Senator Pia Cayetano is absolutely right. A lot of collectors are out there. But I guess one of the biggest, I think, or most worrisome portion of conserving wildlife, Mr. President, is the conservation of its natural habitats. Kasi hindi po natin mako-conserve ang ating mga kahayupan, no, our fauna, if we do not protect the flora portion, which is unfortunately the denudation of forests, the encroachment into protected areas. Ito po ang nagkakaroon ng sanhi ng pagkamatay ng napakarami natin endemic species. At yan din dapat tutukan natin sa panibagong measure. And, Mr. President, aside from poaching, we have to look at this wildlife area, yung encroachment into wildlife areas. I'm very active in a particular program in Palawan, Mr. President, the Katala Foundation. I used to be the chairman of that. That's the Philippine Kakadu Conservation Project in Nara. This is in Rasa Island, Palawan. And even there, where we have had it protected by the national government through the DNR declaration, nagkakaroon pa rin po ng poachers na pumapasok para manghuli nitong Philippine kakatu. These are the red-vented kakatus, which are sold in markets all over the country. Kaya nakakahinayan talaga. We have to increase now the penalties. We have to increase the prison sentences. Of course, looking at sustainability, Mr. President, as well. Kasi tingnan natin ang root cause din ng poaching kasi minsan ay kahirapan. At kaya po sila nanghuhuli nito mga hayop na ito, mga wildlife na ito para maibenta. But sa totoo lang, Mr. President, like for example, in our site in Rasa Island, Palawan, Mr. President, we have made it a tourism site, an ecotourism park, wherein the poachers are now the wildlife rangers who are protecting the park because they make money out of the tourists who see the birds in their natural habitat. Yung mga, ang dami-dami, no, from England, from Japan, they go all over coming from all over the world, they go to the Philippines because they want to do bird watching. And of course, these parks that are protected by former poachers are the #1 areas where they visit. So marami po tayong magagawa para maging sustainable po ang wildlife conservation natin. Kaya siguro one heart lang po kami ni Senator Villar dito sa bill na ito dahil yung sa kanya po ay Senate Bill number 278. Ang akin po ay Senate Bill number 279. So magkatabi lang po kaming number ng bill because we had the same thoughts in mind in wanting to conserve our wildlife. And tama po kayo, tama po ang ating mahal na chairperson, napakaraming sakit ay dahil po sa paghunting at pagkain itong mga wildlife na ito. And we've seen everything from Ebola to HIV to even SARS and COVID-19, bird flu, avian bird flu, that has already contaminated hundreds, upon thousands for the COVID virus upon millions of people because of our non-stop hunger for wildlife. So I think it's nature. I believe, Mr. President, I think that's nature's revenge for us. Unfortunately, no, ayoko sabihin na revenge sana, but that's the only word I can come up with now. So nagalit pong Mother Nature sa atin, it's time for them to bite back or to fight back. Ika nga, unfortunately, with very catastrophic effects. So I fully support the measure, Mr. President. Again, congratulations to our dear colleague from Las Piñas. And we're very excited to start the hearings on this updated Wildlife Conservation Act. So mabuhay po siya, Mr. President. And we'd like now to refer the speech of the lady senator from Las Piñas to the Committee on Natural Resources and to be seconded as requested by Senator Pia Cayetano, secondary referral to the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovations, and Future Thinking. I so move, Mr. President.
So moved. Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today happens to be a special day for all the women of the world. It is also a day where we, the men, have to take the duties in the house. Because today, like what we do during Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, today is Women's Day. So dapat tayo ang mamumuno sa bahay sa mga chores and duties. But to be able to celebrate today, we have ladies and gentlemen who want to recognize the day as very special. So may we recognize, Mr. President, to avail also of the privilege hour, our distinguished colleague from Panay and the Republic of the Philippines, also the chairperson of Women and Children, Senator Risa Ontiveros, to avail of the privilege hour.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to encourage the Majority Leader to take on more of the household duties even when it's not Women's Day. As I guess, Mr. President, he already is also. Mr. President, I rise on a point of personal and collective privilege. Kaunting tulog na lang po. In fact, in just a few hours, halos anniversary na ng quarantine sa ating bansa. Isang taon na nating tinututukan at iniintindi ang mga komplikadong scientific concepts. Sa inaraw-araw, bawat telebisyon sa bansa ay nakabantay kung paano natin mapapanatiling ligtas ang ating pamilya sa kabila ng patuloy na pagtaas ng mga kaso ng COVID-19. Isang taon na tayong may hugot na what could have been dahil sa pagbabalik tanaw sa pamamagitan ng tanong na ito. Ano kaya ang sitwasyon ngayon kung maaga tayong nagsara ng ating mga borders? Kaya Mr. President, mga kasama, ito ang unang International Women's Day na hinulma ng COVID-19. Napakarami na ang nagpatotoo. Iba ang latay ng pandemya sa mga babae. Kung noon, matining ang usapan ukol sa banta ng coronavirus, ngayong 2021, ramdam na ang hagupit at mariing pagdagan ng mga epekto ng COVID-19, lalo na sa mga kababaihan. Ilan sa mga pangunahing laban para sa mga babae na masisipat natin sa ngayon? Ang gender-related violence, economic disempowerment, ang wala sa oras na pagbubuntis dahil sa kawalan ng maayos na serbisyong pangkalusugan at human trafficking. That is why, Mr. President, today, I, along with all the other women senators of the 18th Congress, namely Senators Nancy Binay, Pia Cayetano, Laila De Lima, Amy Marcos, Grace Poe, and Cynthia Villar, filed a bill for gender-responsive and inclusive protocols to address the gender-differentiated needs of women during COVID-19 and other public health concerns, emergencies, and disasters. Ito po ay babae at bayanihan. Ito ay isang pagtugon sa mga natuklasan ng UN Women on the multiple ways that women are differently impacted by our public health crisis. Halimbawa na lamang po, ayon sa Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau, sa lahat ng nag-report sa kanila tungkol sa online gender-based violence from July 2020 to February 2021, ang pinakamalaking segment, 34%, ay ang mga teenagers, 13 to 18 years old, mga menor de edad. 30% naman ay 19 to 25 years old. Nang unang magpataw ng lockdown na siyang itinuturing na isa sa pinakamahigpit sa buong mundo, may malinaw na pagtaas ng bilang ng gender-based violence. Bakit? Dahil ang ilang mga babae ay naging bantay sarado na ng kanilang mga abuser. Bakit ulit? Dahil work from home ang mga empleyado at distance learning ang mga kabataan. Ibig sabihin, mas mahirap humingi ng saklolo mula sa mga katrabaho, kaibigan at kamag-anak. Kung dati ay nakakapunta ang mga babae sa barangay hall para kumuha ng barangay protection order, ngayon, dahil sa takot sa infection, hindi na lang, tinitiis na lang ang pagmamalabis sa bahay. Maging ang online sexual abuse kasi ay lumala dahil halos lahat ay naging netizens na. Pati mga chat apps kagaya ng Telegram ay ginagamit para sa palitan ng mga nude photos. Minsan nga ay business na ito. Nabalitaan namin ang tinatawag nilang Team Lapagan o lapagan ng mga masiselang larawan ng mga kababaihan. Ang laman nito ay kadalasang mga kuha ng kanilang mga karelasyon o dating karelasyon. Kaya tuloy ang mga psychosocial support pages sa internet ang naging takbuhan ng mga biktima ng gender-based violence. Halos hindi na magkanda-ugaga ang mga volunteers sa dami ng mga humihingi ng tulong, payo at minsan agarang saklolo. Pero nariyan sila at handang tumulong sa ating mga kabaro, lalo na sa mga teenagers. Ang bill na ito, Mr. President, ay para sa kanila. Ito ay isa ring pakikiisa at pakikibaka para sa mga manggagawang babae, migrante man o lokal. Ang Pilipinas ay may milyon-milyong domestic workers at karamihan sa kanila ay kababaihan. Why? Because domestic work, aside from being precarious and undervalued, is also largely and traditionally feminized. Ibig sabihin, karamihan ng mga tungkulin namin ay pag-aasikaso sa bahay. At kumusta ang kababaihang manggagawa sa gitna ng pandaigdigang krisis pangkalusugan? Ayon sa isang January 2021 na article mula sa The Guardian, sa unang 2 buwan pa lamang ng coronavirus outbreak, more than half of the Filipino migrant workers surveyed in the United Kingdom had lost their jobs. Bumaba din ang sweldo nila to less than £2 an hour, which is less than a quarter of the UK's statutory minimum wage. They're also at heightened risk of virus exposure, as many, if not most, work in the healthcare system or provide home care to persons with disabilities and senior citizens. For our local women workers, the situation is not much better. Bagamat parehong babae at lalaki ay apektado ng pandemya, data shows that during the pandemic, women bear the brunt of unpaid care work. Noon pa man ay pasanin na talaga ng mga kababaihan yang unpaid care work. Higit 60% ang pumapasa ng mga gawain tulad ng pagluluto, paglilinis, pagtututor sa mga inaalagaang bata at pag-alalay sa ibang miyembro ng pamilya. But the COVID-19 pandemic heavily escalated the need for unpaid care work because of the closure of schools and the reduced public services for the senior citizens and persons with disabilities. Sa totoo lang po, Mr. President, para sa ating mga nanay, hindi po ba dapat kahit paano ay nakakapagpahinga kapag nasa school ang mga chikiting natin? Oras sana ito upang makapag-ayos ng tahanan, maghabol sa mga labahin, siguro makapanood ng konting TV o mag-Facebook man lang. Pero ngayon, kailangan na rin nating tutukan ang mga bata, oras-oras pa kung minsan sa kanilang schoolwork. Ang mga babae ngayon, maliban sa pagiging asawa, nanay at manggagawa, tayo kinakailangan na ring maging school teacher. Mr. President, ito sa mga nanay na hinamon ng panahon na maging algebra, English, science at homeroom teacher. Para sa mga nurse at barangay health workers na exposed sa COVID dahil sa pang-araw-araw na paninilbihan sa mga may sakit. Ito ay pag-akbay sa mga babaeng migrant domestic workers na biglang nawalan ng trabaho dahil nawalan din ng trabaho ang kanilang mga amo. Ang bill na ito ay pag-akay sa mga teenagers na biktima ng gender-based violence, pati mga buntis na misis na hindi makakuha ng barangay protection order mula sa kanyang mapang-abusong asawa dahil bawal daw lumabas ang mga buntis. Ito ay para sa pagbabayanihan ng mga kababaihan. Mr. President, dear colleagues, this pandemic is not just about pain and hardship. This is also about solidarity and resilience, giving space to the vulnerable and people lifting up others amid all uncertainty. Today, as I file this bill with all the women in this 18th Congress Senate, today on International Women's Day, as we celebrate women, we also celebrate sisterhood. Happy International Women's Day, dear sisters, and to our male colleagues and allies here in the Senate. Mabuhay ang babae. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Rizon Tiveros. Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, I would just like to commend Her Honor Senator Risa Hontiveros for bringing to the attention of the body and to the rest of the country and the world the plight of women, especially during this pandemic. We all know, I know that our gentlemen colleagues are well versed also in the plight of women. And I would also like to take this opportunity, and I'm sure that the sponsor will join me in thanking the gentlemen for making this an environment where us women can engage in our profession, can express our sentiments, can put on record our views, whether they are in agreement or disagreement with our colleagues. Because during the time that I was very active in the Interparliamentary Union, I heard horror stories from some of our colleagues from other countries, in particular from Africa, wherein they really were shut down by their male colleagues for the simple reason that they are women. So we'd like to, I think Her Honor will join me in thanking our male colleagues in making this an environment that allows us to stand up to fight for better protection for our women. And on that note, there's more to say, Mr. President, but I think the bill of Her Honor and the concerns that she raised during the speech that she gave is enough information for us to use in the hearings that Her Honor will have to enable us to further come up with policies. And many times it's not just new policies, but it's really implementation of existing policies to protect women. I'd like to just emphasize my deepest concern for teen pregnancies. I think the presiding officer joins us. I believe he's also expressed concern on that before. Teen pregnancy, sadly, this is something that has escalated. Perhaps Her Honor can confirm during this time of the pandemic. And who, in their right mind, can people may have different views on how to use reproductive health that is based on their own personal beliefs, and of course, I cannot see how in any way that can be acceptable. And as Her Honor said, many of them are most likely victims of violence in their own homes. Many of them could have been impregnated by somebody they know or close to them. And this is really a sad state that not just in the Philippines, but worldwide we're experiencing. So I thank Her Honor for bringing this to the attention of the body and allowing us to be a co-author of the measure she sponsored. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to the good gentlewoman from Taguig and Pateros for being a co-author of this bill of all the women members of the Senate of the 18th Congress. I join her in thanking the presiding officer and the other male colleagues in this Senate for working with us women on many occasions on issues that were particular to us as women and on common issues where we sought to bring women's perspectives. And I commit to continue with her and the other women senators to continue working with our male colleagues in other areas where we can further advance the cause of women, even those of different SOGI, if I may say so. I believe I may say so on this floor, every Filipino, Mr. President. And I also confirm what the good gentlewoman said, that indeed the POPCOM itself raised the alarm about the spike in teenage pregnancies under these conditions of pandemic and quarantine. Concerns that are very close to the heart of us women, especially the mothers, and I believe also of the male colleagues, fathers as well. So thank you very much again to the good gentlewoman at salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President, we congratulate the lady senator. First of all, we'd like to state that we are in full support of her speech and her bills and advocacies, particularly in the protection of women and children. One thing that we'd like to put on record, Mr. President, we are a matriarchal society in the Philippines, wherein mother knows best and the wives are usually our boss. So, Mr. President, talaga mga bossing natin, kung tayo ay tigre, yung tamer at trainer ng tigre ang usually ang ating mga asawa. Alam na alam ni Tita Cynthia Villar yan. Siya po ang aming principal dito sa Senado. So, Mr. President, I move that the speech of the lady senator be referred to the Committee on Women and Children, Mr. President. So,
So referred.
Mr. President, just to continue with the topic, we have a resolution. Before we take up the resolution of Father Bernas, we'd like to continue with the topic on Women's Day celebration. Mr. President, I move with the permission of the body to consider Senate Resolution number 673. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, so approved.
Mr. President, I move that we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure so we can proceed with the
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Resolution commemorating the 2021 celebration of International Women's Day on March 8.
May we recognize, Mr. President, our distinguished colleague, the chairperson of the Committee on Labor and Higher Education, no other than Senator Joel Villanueva, Mr. President, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished Majority Floor Leader. Para naman po i-represent ang mga kalalakihan ng Senado, we filed this resolution. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is my honor to sponsor Senate Resolution number 673, commemorating the celebration of the International Women's Day today, March 8, 2021. Pero sa totoo lang po, Ginoong Pangulo, marami po sa ating mga kalalakihan ang naniniwalang araw-araw ay Women's Day. Lalo na po sa mga kasamahan nating miyembro ng Takusa. Alam nyo na ho ang ibig sabihin noon. At sa mga palaging yes dear kay Commander. Mr. President, in the book of Genesis chapter 5 verse 2 it says, He or God created them male and female and He blessed them and called them human. Nililinaw po at pinagtitibay nito ang Genesis chapter 1 verse 27 which reads, So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. Ginoong Pangulo, hindi po buo ang tao kung babae lang o kung lalaki lang. Ang tao po ay babae at lalaki, patas at pareho, wala pong nakakalamang. Ang kalahati po ng kabuuang populasyon ng mundo, maging ng Pilipinas, ay pawang mga kababaihan rin. Dangal at karangalan po ng ating pagkatao ang mga kababaihan. Sila po ang ating mga ina, kabiyak, tita, ate, biyanan, kapatid at anak. Nung nasa TESDA pa po tayo, Ginoong Pangulo, I can say that in various trades dominated by highly skilled male workers, a number of females are successfully breaking the barriers. In fact, more than 50% of textbook graduates are women, and they have proven that by taking courses more popular among men, they can also excel in them. Many Filipino women are now making a decent and stable living as welders, as drivers, automotive mechanics, and even power line women, Mr. President. Kaya naman po, marapat po lamang na mula pa noong 1975 na inilaan na nga ng United Nations ang ika-8 ng buwan ng Marso para sa kababaihan bilang International Women's Day. Subalit noong pong 1977, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution proclaiming a United Nations Day for Women's Rights and International Peace na ipinagdiriwang po any day of the year ayon sa sariling tradisyon at kasaysayan ng mga bansang kasapi ng United Nations. Makalipas po ang mahigit 10 taon, the first woman Filipino president, President Cory Aquino, proclaimed March 8 as Women's Rights and International Peace Day at ang first week of March as Women's Week sa bisa ng Proclamation number 224 noong 1988. Nalagdaan din po ang Republic Act number 6949 which established the 8th day of March every year as a working special holiday to be known as National Women's Day noong 1990. Subalit, Ginoong Pangulo, wala na po sigurong mas bibigat pa sa pagkilalang ibinigay ng ating konstitusyon, ang 1987 Constitution, sa mahalagang gampanin ng kababaihan sa nation building. Gayon din po sa pagtiyak sa patas na turing at pagtingin ng batas sa babae at lalaki. Article 2, Section 14 of the Constitution reads, "The state recognizes the role of women in nation building and shall ensure the fundamental equality before the law of women and men." Kaya totoo naman po, Ginoong Pangulo, at alam ko pong hindi i-deny ng ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado that behind every successful man, there is a woman. Sometimes women po, Ginoong Pangulo, in plural form. But don't get me wrong, as I'm speaking from my personal experience, hindi ko po alam, Ginoong Pangulo, kung paano ko po mararating ang oportunidad na ibinigay sa akin ng Diyos ngayon kung wala po ang mga babae sa buhay ko. Ang aking ina, si Sister Dory, siyempre ang aking asawa, si Gladys, ang aking mga kapatid, ang namayapang mayor ng Bukawi, Mayor Johnny, at ang kapatid kong si Jovi. Kaya po noong 2009, Ginoong Pangulo, during our last term in the House of Representatives as SIBAC Party List Representative, we strongly supported and pushed for the passage of RA number 9710 or the Magna Carta of Women. I'm sure that you will agree that this institution is a women-first Senate sapagkat palagi po nating binibigyan ng significance ang mga kababaihan sa ating mga isinusulong na mga batas. Mga female workers po ang naging inspirasyon natin noong sinabatas po natin yung work from home law para tiyakin po na pantay na magagampanan ng mga kababaihan ang pagiging ilaw ng tahanan at bilang isang manggagawa. Mr. President, celebrating women's unique and essential contributions at home and in the workplace serves as timely reminder and relevant measure both of our achievements and the work we are yet to accomplish in order to secure the fundamental equality before the law of women and men. Today, we also honor our women healthcare workers and frontliners who offered their lives to fight COVID-19 pandemic and countless others who became sick and infected. Kaya napapanahon po ang tema ng pagdiriwang ng National Women's Day ngayong taon, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. This year's theme celebrates the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the globe in shaping a more equal future and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Naniniwala po tayo, Ginoong Pangulo, na kailangan mailahok parati ang pananaw at saloobin ng mga kababaihan sa pag-ukit ng mga batas at pagpapatupad nito sa lahat ng antas at sa bawat hakbang ng ating pandemic response at recovery. Kapag kasama po natin every step of the way ang mga kababaihan, hindi po tayo maliligaw. Kapag patuloy pong umangat ang estado ng mga kababaihan sa lipunan, aangat din po ang bayan. At hanggang may mga babaeng patuloy na mangunguna sa laban sa pandemya, imposible pong hindi magtagumpay ang ating sambayanan. Muli, Happy International Women's Day of 2021. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, dear colleagues, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva.
Mr. President, may we request, thank you, Mr. President, may we request Senator Villanueva if all members of the Senate could be made co-sponsors, co-authors of this resolution? If
Before that,
Mr.
the
President.
Chair recognizes Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief response at nag-abala naman si Senator Joel na magbigay ng pagpugay sa aming mga kababaihan and for all the women out there who are working hard, dealing with the challenges. So I'd like to thank His Honor for taking the time to acknowledge the work of women and to do the research that justifies why we have to continue working together. I wasn't able to include it in my response to Senator Risa's privileged speech. I'll include it now. The importance of gender partnership, because I think along with the discussion on women empowerment or addressing discrimination is also gender partnership, because we cannot solve these problems alone as a single gender. We need to work together as a team. So thank you again, Senator Joel.
Thank you. Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Likewise, I join the good gentlewoman from Taguigan Pateros in thanking the good gentleman from Bulacan for making, yes, not only Mr. President for wearing women's color today, but indeed for taking the trouble to speak out on our very special day out of the 300 plus in a year on various issues, including that of labor and health that are important to women. And therefore, may I also thank the presiding officer for giving the opening prayer to today's session, a Women's Day flavor. So maraming salamat, gentlemen.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, Mr. President, today is a special day. As I mentioned earlier, we're a matriarchal society. I believe we are top 10. I'm sure the lady senators in the floor know this. I believe we're in the top 10 in terms of influence, no women, how women influence our society in the world. I think we are one of the top 10 countries. Indeed, not only in industries, also in politics, we've had elected 2 women presidents, Mr. President, in our history, and even in the halls of the Supreme Court, many of the very distinguished members of the Supreme Court were women, and many distinguished members of the Senate and the House of Representatives are women. Indeed, today is a special day, Mr. President, for them. And I'm a proud member, Mr. President. Sabi kanina ni Joel Villanueva ay takusa daw po siya na grupo. Meron din akong grupo na isinama. Medyo ako po isa sa mga leaders ng grupo na yon. Ay yung aming chairman sa Davao Region ay si Chairman Ronald Bato de la Rosa. At ito po yung grupong UHAW. UHAW is the Union of Husbands Afraid of Wives. Yan yung grupo namin, Mr. President. And we are proud of that. And, we are proud that we are faithful and loving to our wives and to all the women of this chamber. Mr. President, with that, I move that we, with no other comments from our colleagues, I move that we adopt Senate Resolution number 673, Mr. President. So moved.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Si Senator Gatchalian, Mr. President, malapit na rin membro namin sa UHAW. Anyway, Mr. President, moving forward, I move that with the permission of the body, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 674, taking into consideration Senate Resolution number 675. I so move.
Any objection? The motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Resolution honoring the late Father Joaquin G. Bernas, S.J., JSD, for his immeasurable and invaluable contributions to the legal profession and society, and expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the untimely demise of the best-known authority on the Constitution and one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution.
Mr. President, may we recognize our distinguished Senate President, Vicente Soto III, to sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
The Senate President, Senator Vicente Tito Soto III, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Majority Leader, thank you. My esteemed colleagues. There are a lot of impressions, or should I say, misconceptions that people have about lawyers, whether these were caused by television shows, movies, or sometimes first-hand experiences. There are some negative opinions about them. I'm reminded of a story of a man who was happened upon a tombstone that read, "Here lies John Smith, a good man and a lawyer." The man read it and asked, when did they start putting 2 people in one grave? However, Mr. President, this was not and had never been the case for Father Joaquin Bernas. He had a strong sense of morals and ethics. He was humble. He was calm. He exuded authority, even in his silence. How could someone so endearing, because of his gentleness and kind and empowering words, can be conceived as unkind? Surely not Father Bernas. Father Joaquin Bernas was a Jesuit priest, a doctor of juridical science, lawyer, professor, writer, columnist, and author. He was a lawyer first before he became a priest. He had a passion for learning as he devoted his time and effort in advancing his knowledge and understanding of the law and other disciplines. Father Bernas obtained his Bachelor of Arts degree in English, Latin, and Greek classics and Masters of Arts degree in English, in philosophy, from the Birchman's College in 1956 and 1957, respectively. Bachelor of Laws degree from the Ateneo de Manila Law School in 1962 and placed ninth in the bar examinations given that year. Licentiate of Sacred Theology from Woodstock College in 1966, and Master of Laws and Doctor of Juridical Science from New York University in 1965 and 1968, respectively. He was never selfish. All of the knowledge he acquired from those revered institutions he willingly and openly shared, not only to his students and his community, but to the entire nation by being a member of the Constitutional Commission that drafted the 1987 Constitution. But his impartment of his expertise did not stop from his membership in the Constitutional Commission. In fact, it intensified after that. A bar top-notcher and a known constitutionalist, he authored and published several books and articles dealing with the Constitution, such as The Intent of the 1986 Constitution Writers. That was in 1995. And then the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, a commentary in 1996. Constitutional Structure and Powers of Government, Notes and Cases, 1997. Constitutional Rights and Social Demands, Notes and Cases, 2004, among others. Father Bernas' commentary and comprehensive reviewer on constitutional law are must-haves for any law student and lawyer alike, Atenean or not. As an amicus curiae, or a friend of the court, Father Bernas' views and arguments on some important cases of national significance and interests were usually sought, but by no less than the Supreme Court, particularly on the Asia-Pacific Conference on the East Timor in the Philippines, the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997, the impeachment case against Chief Justice Hilario G. Davida Jr., the oral arguments in the FPJ citizenship case, where I distinctly and I was given the honor of Father Bernas with a very lengthy private talk that we had. He was a dear friend, and he understood where FPJ and I were coming from. That was in 2004. Also, the oral arguments in the Memorandum of Agreement on Ancestral Domain, or the MOAAD. In all these cases, Mr. President, he had consistently persuaded the court, orally or in writing, with clear objectivity based on the fundamental principles of justice and humanity, but humbly reminding his colleagues and followers that when it comes to the interpretation of the 1987 Constitution, the Supreme Court always had the final say, and that was a quote from him. Sui generis, legendary, and non-parallel. These are how the people who have worked with him and those who were under his wings had to say about Father Joaquin Bernas. Truly, he was all that and more. He was a great servant of the church and the law, who had always responded to the call of legal and moral duty to protect democracy and human rights, unmindful of his own physical well-being and whose unblemished devotion and faith in God and the rule of law had helped rebuild the country through his teachings, writings, and leadership. His death is a great loss, not only to his Atenean family and to the legal profession, but to the Filipino people and the nation as well. We salute you, Father Bernas, for a life of service and devotion to God, the rule of law, and your countrymen. And thus I seek the support of my dear colleagues for the adoption of PS Resolution 674, taking into consideration PS Resolution number 675, resolution authored by Senator Richard Gordon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, the Senate President. Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Respectfully, requesting the good Senate President and the good gentleman from Zambales to make me a co-author of their resolutions. For the record, Mr. President, we are one with the country in mourning. Not only the death of a brilliant legal luminary, but also the loss of a great Jesuit educator and a devoted patriot. Father Joaquin Bernas will forever be remembered for his invaluable contribution to shaping our Constitution. The Constitution that provides our duties as public servants and that ensures the promise of democracy and rule of law to every Filipino. As public servants, we are bound to protect the Constitution. We cannot thank Father Bernas enough for the work he put into helping create a Constitution that reflects not only our hopes, but also our values as a people. Perhaps his greatest contribution was how many public servants Father Bernas has inspired. He was the Dean Emeritus of the Ateneo Law School community, where he continued to inspire the next generations of lawyers and public servants. In our Sanggunian 1980s chat group of Ateneo alumni, we came to the same conclusion that we would always remember Father Bernas as the Ateneo president who protected our student council during dangerous times and supported the activism of the Ateneo and the Ateneo-based NGO community beginning in the 1980s. Dean Hofilenia said it best, Mr. President, when he described Father Bernas as indeed a person, an excellent man for others. Let us not let his legacy fade away. I share my heartfelt and grieving condolences with the family and the friends he has left behind, to our whole Ateneo community, and to our whole nation. Even in death, Father Bernas's teachings remain a North Star for the rule of law in these trying times. So we must continue to fight for the rights of every Filipino, just as he would have wanted. Rest in peace, Father Bernas. I will miss you with sadness and love. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also recognize one of the authors of the resolution, Senator Richard Gordon, Mr. President.
The gentleman from Zambales, Senator Richard Dick Gordon, is recognized. You're on mute, Senator Gordon. Yes, Senator Gordon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Senator President Soto, for an excellent presentation on the life of a Jesuit lawyer. And thank you, Senator Ontiveros, for your remarks. I had authored this resolution at the moment he passed on, and I wanted to be able to make sure that the Senate did not miss this opportunity to honor such a great Filipino, a Bicolano at that, who has done so much in terms of the law and has become an example to all the students and Jesuits alike. Father Bernas, some people call him Father Bernie or Father B. We called him Father Kinnick. Joaquin. Talagang he was such a presence. I was fortunate enough to be part of the high school and the college when he was there as an scholastic. And he always impressed me as somebody who was very, very deep insights and felt strongly at so many things in life. He epitomed to me, he was the epitome to me of the quintessential Jesuit, you know. They all everything that he did was indeed for the greater glory of God. But among the Jesuits, he stood high, shoulders above everyone, and I call it primus inter pares. He was first among equals, Mr. President. After all, you know, it's hard enough to get into the Society of Jesus. You know, it's a very, very elite society that Saint Ignatius de Loyola founded, and it's based on really magis. The Jesuit Latin term, which means more or to a greater degree. One demanded more or to a greater degree from any Jesuit, or for that matter, any student, Mr. President. Magis. That's something that came after our time in Ateneo, but during that time we had phrases like in altum vola, which means fly high, to ambition, to work hard. And this is Joaquin Bernas. I will no longer delineate what Senator Soto, the Senate President, said, because you know, he was a lawyer par excellence. He had a master's degree in law, and certainly I can only say that why I justify the fact that he was primus inter pares, even at a young age. He was the father superior, or the provincial, of the Jesuits order in the Philippines. By that time, all American Jesuits, or most of them, had already gone. And in the Philippine province of the Jesuit order, he was the provincial superior during trying times. And he was provincial superior from 1977 to 1982. And certainly he did so well, especially during those times when we were still under martial law. By the way, in spite of his busy schedule, he baptized my son. And I was very, very happy about that and honored about that, because certainly you just cannot get Father Bernas to do other duties like that. But he was humble enough to accept my invitation, come to my house, and I baptized my son in my home. As we all know, Mr. President, he was a dedicated educator. He taught law. And as we say in the UP, he taught law in the grand manner, and he wanted to make great lawyers out of everyone. But he did this in the Ateneo, which was my undergraduate school, but I took my law in UP. I know that Father Bernas was a dedicated educator because we were exposed to him in high school and college. He shared his knowledge and expertise on political and constitutional laws to young law students, inspiring them to become excellent public servants and legal practitioners. Father Bernas specialized in the Philippine Constitution, and as we all know, he authored a number of books on constitutional law. He was a go-to guy when it comes to the Constitution. As a Jesuit educator, Father Kinnick cultivated the minds of his students based on cura personalis, or the care for the individual person. Mr. President, many things can be said about Father Bernas, but he was a human being par excellence. Not only smart, not only wise, but certainly a humanitarian at heart. He was indeed an excellent man. No, I correct that. He is indeed an excellent man for others, which is the Ateneo definition of young people from the Ateneo, a man for others, but he was an excellent man for others. On September 12, 2018, Ateneo Law School and Energy Regulatory Commission Academy launched the Father Bernas Center for Continuing Legal Education into the Father Bernas Institute. establishment of Father Bernard's Center for Continuing Legal Education, was the Atenean's reminder of his legacy and great contribution. That you do not stop at getting a title, you continue to learn the law and to live the law, and to make sure your lives and ultimately Philippines' future is protected by the rule of law. So, Mr. President, he became a member of the 1986 Constitutional Commission, as we all know, and he was one of the pillars of that Constitutional Commission. He imparted his legal brilliance in the drafting of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Father Bernas, indeed, is not only a leading constitutionalist, but a pillar of legal education. He was a highly intellectual individual. Was often called to the court to share his wisdom as amicus curiae, a friend of the court, on complex and novel constitutional issues. He was a major mind in resolving some key legal issues of national significance. On the defense of the constitutionality of a landmark legislation, show his humanity, he cared about the lowliest, the vulnerable ones, the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1977. He made sure that it was defended well for its constitutionality. Aside from providing advice on the legal strategy and theory for the case, Father Bernas also provided spiritual guidance to the handling lawyers, boosting their confidence and morale into winning the case. For God, if God is with us, how can we lose? I suppose, was a theory that he espoused, which eventually led to the implementation of the processing of ancestral domain claims of indigenous peoples. Many of you are perhaps unaware that we were influenced by that, so that Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority has provided the Aitas with ownership practically of the land, and they get a stipend from Subic because they were the originals in that land. And that is the influence of Father Bernas upon me. On the temporary restraining order issued against the holding of the Asia Pacific Conference on East Timor, he was also an amicus curiae. The Supreme Court ordered that to be lifted. On the constitutional issues on the Memorandum of Agreement on Ancestral Domain regarding the historic right of the Bangsamoro people to claim their homeland between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the government of the Republic of the Philippines, he was also an advisor and backer of this landmark provision authored by my good friend Senator Zubiri. Indeed, Father Bernas is not just a brilliant lawyer and renowned constitutionalist, he was a God-fearing man and a friend. Parang double entendre, no? Pari na siya, God-fearing pa rin siya. Which just shows you not just because you're a priest doesn't entitle you towards the kingdom of heaven. He had to show it, he had to make it happen, and he had an earthly life dedicated to service, the standards of excellence for the greater glory of God, ad maiore Dei gloria. And certainly all this, he imparted a work ethic, ad astra per aspera. Through hardships, you go to the stars. Mr. President, the passing of Father Bernas as a pillar of constitutional, not only the Ateneo Law School, but also in our country, deserves an honor for his years of excellent dedication to service and God. I'm glad Senate President Soto delivered his remarks because Senator Soto and I share one school, Letran. He was also an Ateneo for a while. But I'm glad he had imbibed enough to really appreciate what a good man really is. And I really salute Senate President Soto for his remarks. Well said, Senate President. So, Mr. President, today I urge our colleagues to pause a little, to tarry a little in this world of challenge, a world of death, so many deaths right now, and pause a little and remember the example of Father Joaquin Kinik Bernas, Society of Jesus, Mr. President. And I hope that all of us will unanimously give him the honor that he so richly deserves. an honor that is reserved by the Senate to exceptional people such as Father Kenneth Bernas. Mr. President, I submit and thank everybody for their patience in allowing me to deliver this presentation about the life of a great man. Thank you very much,
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Senator Joel Villanueva.
Yes, Mr. President, this will be short with the permission of our distinguished Senate President, Senator Soto and Senator Gordon. May I be allowed to become co-author of the resolution? I may not have had the chance to really talk in person with Father Bernas, but as a student of history and hearing my personal mentors being or learning from the master himself, Mr. President, I'd be honored if I can be co-author of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, first to ask permission to be also recognized is Senator Tolentino, after which Senator Pete Pangilinan, Mr. President.
Senator Francis Tol Tolentino is recognized, and afterwards, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan.
Mr. President, may I ask the authors that I be allowed to be a co-author as well. Dean Bernas was our dean at the Ateneo Law School, and I can vividly remember that he has one basic thesis in all his books about constitutional law, that the Constitution is a living Constitution. And a living Constitution is one that evolves, changes over time, and adapts to new circumstances. We owe that doctrine not just to Father Bernas, but his explication of that theory has been part of our Constitution, has been part of legal theory in the Philippines, and he will be always remembered for that. So if I may be allowed again to join as a co-author of that resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino. Senator Kiko Pangilinan is recognized at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. May we likewise be allowed to be co-author of the measure. As a member of the legal profession, the legal community is grieving the loss of a great constitutionalist in the person of Father Bernas. We are also, we were once part of the Ateneo academic community. We taught at the Ateneo for 7 years, from 1993 to 2000. And he was revered there. He was highly respected in the Ateneo academic community. And I am certain the academic community of the Ateneo is also grieving the loss of a great constitutionalist. And so we bid him farewell, and we mourn and we express our condolences to the Ateneo and to his family. And may we be allowed to be co-author of the measure. Thank you for the record,
Thank
Mr.
you,
President.
Senator Pangilinan. Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, I'd also like to be recognized as co-author for the tribute to Father Bernas. I remember during the court case of FPJ in 2004, when the issue was his citizenship, Father Bernas, as a member of the Friends of the Court, stayed for the 12-hour or more marathon just to be able to defend the right of a child and stating that FPJ should be considered a natural born. Having a father is sufficient for him to be considered a natural born Filipino citizen. We are very grateful for his fairness and for his legal expertise and for adding clarity to that debate that ultimately FPJ won. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Grace Poe. Majority Leader.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our authors, if we can make, I'm sure none of our colleagues will deny this, Mr. President, if we can make all members of the Senate as a co-author of this measure, Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Gordon and Senator Soto.
Yes, before that, the chair recognizes the distinguished Minority Leader, Senator Franklin De Leon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, with the permission of the principal authors, I hope they can accommodate our request that we be made a co-author, and let me take this opportunity to say a few words about the eminent constitutionalist, Father Joaquin Bernas. Father Joaquin Bernas was born in Baao, Camarines Sur, a cousin of my wife, Milagros Serrano, who is from the neighboring town of San Jose Partido, also in Camarines Sur. I recall the days when I had close interaction with Father Bernas when he was our advisor in the peace panel that went to Amsterdam in order to negotiate with Joe Masison on a peace pact, which obviously did not come to reality. But I saw how softly, how politely Father Joaquin Bernas would argue constitutional points why we could not concede to the Communist Party of the Philippines the exercise of any sovereign rights of the country without their being elected. And over the years, I recall the afternoons or Sunday afternoons when Mila and I would visit Father Bernas in the Jesuit residence. And I have to make a confession. I would bribe him with a bottle of Black Label, which he loves very much. So it is with these fond memories, both on a personal level and a professional level, that we will miss, that I will miss Father Joaquin Bernas. I do not see another Joaquin Bernas emerging in the legal infirmament and for the rest of my life. So Godspeed, Father Bernas, and may you rest in peace. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. As earlier manifested by the majority leader and with the permission of the principal authors, all those physically and virtually present are made the co-authors of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to also share a bit of anecdote on our distinguished honoree today, Father Joaquin Bernas, on this resolution honoring his life. I had an opportunity, Mr. President, to see him when we were taking up the Bangsamoro organic law. And he gave me a lot of good advice, which in turn was adopted in several amendments, particularly on the Bangsamoro law. And he was so helpful, being being a constitutionalist and a former author of the 1987 Constitution. How he mentioned to us that some of the provisions that we wanted to place could be done, as his intention at that time when they were crafting the 1987 Constitution for the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao was, according to him, left to the future leaders of Congress to decide by enactment of law. And we really appreciated that, Mr. President. Coming from Father Bernas, it was a big step forward to the fight for peace in Mindanao through the Organic Act. And we thank him for that, Mr. President. I'd like to second the observation of Senator Drilon. I don't think we will ever have another Father Joaquin Bernas in our lifetime, Mr. President. So he will sorely be missed. And with that, Mr. President, no other colleagues would like to further any comments. We'd like to move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 674, taking in consideration Senate Resolution number 675, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Senate Resolution 674, taking into consideration PS Resolution 675, is adopted, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the presiding officer, Mr. President, continue with this interpellation on his report, or tomorrow na po yung pinag-usapan natin first hour?
As I told you earlier, I requested to defer consideration of Resolution 559 under Committee Report 186.
Opo, first hour po, we take in consideration that, we promise.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. President, we have two more measures I move that we resume consideration with the permission of the body, House Bill number 8631 under Committee Report number 188. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Yes, Mr. President, this is the act granting Philippine citizenship to Buenvenido Morejon Marañon. This is the gentleman from Spain who wishes to be a Filipino, one of the top footballers of football players of the region. When I say region, Mr. President, the ASEAN region and the Asian region, Mr. President. May we recognize to sponsor Senator Richard Gordon. And Mr. President, yes.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Mr. President, no member wishes
Thank you very much. We're ready to be interpolated as far as
Yes.
I understand.
Mr. President,
Interpolation.
yeah, I believe, Mr. President, there are no interpolations for the gentleman from the future gentleman from Negros who is applying for citizenship. So I move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of interpolation is closed.
I move to open the period of amendments. If there are any, Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized for the period of amendments.
The committee has no amendments, Mr. President. We have no amendments for this, for Bienvenido Morejon Marañon.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendments closed.
With that, Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 8631. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Yes, Senator Gordon? You were saying?
No. We're ready to be interpolated.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill 8631 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations are in order to both the chairperson of the committee and to Mr. Marañon, being also principal author of this measure. I'm very happy that we have a very, very good player in the ASCAO's football team, Mr. President. A chance to really shine in the international competition circuit. So, Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration of the same so we can do third reading on Monday next week.
All right, thank you. Consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 8632 under Committee Report number 189.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and I believe to ask a few questions, clarificatory questions, is a distinguished colleague from Aurora, Senator Sunny Angara, Mr. President.
The sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, is recognized, and to interpolate Senator Sunny Angara.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will accept the amendment right away. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. May I just inquire of our good friend, Senator Dick Gordon, the gentleman from Zambales, if he could just yield to a few clarificatory inquiries from this representation who's very supportive of the bill, Mr. President.
Always, Mr. President, to Senator Sunny Angara.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the outset, Mr. President, Majority Leader, I'd like to thank our colleague for swiftly acting on the bill as soon as the House passed it. He scheduled a committee hearing as soon as it was referred to the Committee on Justice, which he chairs. I just received a few calls in the last week over some of the effects of the bill, Your Honor, and I would like to solicit his views on the matter, if it's all right, Mr. President. As I said, I'm very supportive of this bill, and we hope to have it passed in time for the matches of Gilas, the men's Gilas basketball team, the last week of this month. But be that as it may, I would like to solicit his view. Because as you know, Mr. President, Ange Kwame is playing as an import for Ateneo de Manila, and I think he's played 2 or 3 years. Is that correct, Your Honor?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indeed, he is. I don't know whether you call him an import because he's homegrown. He studied in the Ateneo in high school, and we chose his intent to be a Filipino. I would not consider him an import like some of the others who have studied beforehand. In fact, Mr. President, a lot of I know of a couple of people who went to our universities and have remained here, but some have gone on to play for other countries, like one gentleman from LaSalle who was really a terror on the basketball court until Hans Kwame arrived. I would not classify him as an import because he really loves to become a citizen.
But I agree with the gentleman in his classification or in his description of Ange Kwame, Your Honor, because I think Ange Kwame has really made the Philippines his home and signified his intent to live here and live as a Filipino even after his playing days are over. And I know the chair made that clear in his remarks during our hearing. Senator Marcos, Majority Leader Zubiri were there during the committee hearing, chaired by Senator Gordon, Chairman Gordon. But may I just solicit an answer? Is Kwame considered an import in the UAAP at present, Mr. President?
I'm afraid I'll have to say that I don't know what an import in the UAAP means because there's so many of them. You have Dwight Achuete in our university in UP, Akweti, and of course there are others in other universities. Kobe Paras, I think, is an American citizen. He also plays for UP. Juan Gomez de Leaño, the Leaño brothers are outstanding players. And certainly you have a lot of other folks that have other citizenship or double citizenship, if you will.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. President, let's say we pass this bill into law tomorrow. There is that distinct possibility of Kwame playing as a local and Ateneo being able to recruit another import looms on the horizon. And when I filed this bill, that possibility was not clear to me at the time. No, so may I solicit the views of the gentleman from Zambales on that possibility? Would that be fair, Your Honor?
Well, Mr. President, I think if we give him citizenship, he's entitled to all the rights and privileges of a citizen, Mr. President. So I don't think it will reflect badly on the Ateneo if they have Kwame as a Filipino. In fact, it will give us pride that somebody had chosen to be a Filipino. Same reason why I'm proud of my father who elected to be a Filipino. His other brothers went on to America, but he stayed behind. However, I would not know if the UAAP would have a policy later on that would prohibit that. It's a free country. UAAP can do that, but so far as I'm concerned, Kwame is entitled to play, and if there are no rules concerning what the gentleman has described as imports, that would have to be on the matter of the board of the UAAP making new rules and regulations to that effect, Mr. President. I hope that satisfies the question. I'm trying to at best to accommodate because I would also like to see UP get an extra.
You know, we are still, for the information of everyone, we are still being updated by both the Converge and the DICT. So, yeah. So are they okay now? Go ahead. We can hear you now, Senator Gordon.
I'm so sorry, Mr. President. Like I said, to be very brief, I think the UAP would have to make rules to that effect. But to my belief as a lawyer, I think once he becomes a Filipino, he's entitled to all the rights and privileges of being a Filipino. And if there's a new advantage from the standpoint of Senator Angaro, who's a very, very influential member of the UP community, like many of us, then such a suggestion can be made the UAP community, and maybe they can raise that matter sa UAP board.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we heard now, Mr. President?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. President. In case I understand, the UAAP had an emergency meeting today, and they were precisely going to discuss this bill under deliberation by the chamber, Your Honor. I think one of the topics of their discussions is the passage of a rule limiting the ability of naturalized players to play or to be considered as locals, to play as locals in the UAAP in the coming seasons, to those who had residency of 10 years. And under that, should that become a rule, Mr. President, Your Honor, then Ange Kwame would not be able to play as a local. May I solicit your views as to the fairness of that rule? Would you say that was a fair rule? Would you say it's an unfair rule? Would you say it's a discriminatory rule, Mr. President?
I would say it's discriminatory, Mr. President, with all due respect. The gentleman I revere as a great lawyer himself, there would be some diminution of the citizenship that is afforded to Mr. Kwame. Now, it would be a different rule if they said no more imports because, of the play that Mr. Kwame provides. Although I think that would be discriminatory. The country will benefit from Mr. Kwame's participation in Gilas. In fact, Mr. President, in Gilas, if we have Mr. Kwame, we can still have another import. The way I understand it, that will make it. Well, that's why I was hoping that we have Kai Soto who's playing. He's a Filipino, and if he plays for us, we would be formidable. And if we get another import, I'm sure all those other teams that has been beating us would now have to have a double take on what they're going to do to fight against us.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe if Ange Kwame becomes a Filipino, he would not be qualified under FIBA rules to play as a local because their definition of a local is someone who acquired the citizenship of the country that he intends to play for or acquired a passport of that country before he reaches the age of 16. So Ange Kwame would be playing for the Philippine team as a naturalized player or an import, Mr. President. So we would not be able to get another player or another import under FIBA rules, Mr. President. That's what I know, no? But I'm not an expert on this. Yes.
Senator Angara has the advantage. I'm not aware of the FIBA rules, but certainly that can also be challenged because once you're naturalized, it will make more realistic and more, proper that once somebody gets naturalized, you don't trifle with citizenship. You really become a citizen with all the accoutrements allowed you. And that's why I sometimes, like I said, I like Blatch, I like Dawit, or whatever you pronounce his name is. But still, I do not want to provide citizenship just because we're going to use him for play. I like the Spanish guy, Marañon, because he's playing in Bacolod, and there were two Marañons who were governors, but he's not related. What about the other hand, Mr. President? Marañon is really enthusiastic about being a Filipino. He was not unabashed singing the national anthem before us, as you saw, and he really wants to live in the Philippines and hopefully bring his parents here. And also because in Spain, all you have to do if you're a Filipino, because we're part of the colonies of Spain before, is that you apply for residence for 2 years, and they will allow you citizenship, of course, based on your good record and your ability to be able to be to be understood and not be a charge or not be a heavy burden upon the state. Now, these two players will definitely not be a burden to the state, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you for the response, Mr. President, Your Honor. When you answered earlier to one of my queries, Your Honor, that you feel it would be discriminatory if the UAAP were to pass a resolution requiring a 10-year residency for foreign-born players to play as locals in the UAAP, in the coming UAAP seasons. Are you arguing, or are you, do you base your answer on the, is that a legal answer, or I mean, is it based on law, or is it based on principles of fairness, Your Honor? Do you feel it's illegal, or let me try to phrase that better, Your Honor? Is it, do you feel it's discriminatory from the point of view of law, or just the point of view of fairness, Your Honor?
I think it's discriminatory from the point of view of law and from this from the standpoint of equity and fairness, because that is a restraint to his full rights of a naturalized citizenship, a naturalized citizen. And who would the UAP be trying to, what would the UAP be trying to do? It would be trying to defy what an act of Congress has undertaken to make him a citizen because he wants to, and therefore we should allow him to play because he is a citizen once we say so.
That's true. That's true, Your Honor. And I checked with all the past citizenship laws, and they are passed without condition. So it would be unusual for us to place any preconditions to a person's citizenship. But again, I go back to again the concept of fairness and perhaps parity in collegial sports, because we all know perhaps that some schools are better funded than the others. And perhaps better able to recruit players as a result. And there's been a noticeable increase in competition for prized recruits from high schools in collegiate sports, a so-called arms race, if you will, Mr. President. And would it not better serve parity to, if the UAAP were to pass that resolution to ensure, because as it is, Ateneo is already lording it over with one import, and that's Kwame. And if they were to get another import, would that not be fair to the rest of the league, Mr. President?
Remember, oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I was not gone.
Well,
Mr. President, I don't think it's a question of fairness, but competitiveness. I'm not aware that funding is a requirement. In fact, in the Ateneo, getting educated is the priority, especially for the Ateneo and Coach Baldwin. And the record speaks for itself. We had Frankie Rabat in 1953, I think, or 54, when Kaloy Laisaga, the great difference, was playing for us. Frankie Rabat failed in the Ateneo, and he had to take extra studies or extra sessions to qualify him to play, and he had to come in delayed in Brazil or Rio de Janeiro, Mr. President. So, to me, it's a question of competitiveness, and whether you like it or not. For an example, we have Terdi Ravena, who doesn't want to come back because he's playing competitive basketball in Japan. And I think he also makes a lot of money more in Japan than in the Philippines. And then you see the spectacle today of Bobby Ray Parks, who I know personally, and his father I know personally, who suddenly stops playing, says, I want to take a sabbatical. And of course, the headlines say it's a question of character with him. I also recall another player that from Ateneo, Greg Slaughter, who was picked up from Cebu, along with the behemoth from San Miguel. I don't remember his name quite. Junmar, yes. Junmar Fajardo. I would also like to say that a guy by the name of Ben Mbala was taken by LaSalle, and he was a monster of a player, if you will recall, until Kwame came over. But, you know, that's the rough and tumble of the game. We can make adjustments, I suppose, in the UAAP. If we're all sitting down there, I'm sure we will all agree. And we don't want to win championships because we diminish the other fellow, but we won but we'd like to win championships because we practice harder and we got more heady players, and taller players, if you will. But that's the name of the game.
Will the two gentlemen favor this representation with enlightenment?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Mr. President.
The FIBA is strict on imports. Ano? Sino ba nag-invento sa kanila noon? Because it appears na yung mga bansang katulad natin, ayaw nila ng marami import. Why? They want the first world countries to lord over the basketball all the time? Eh kung kaya natin mag-import ng 5, bakit? Hindi ba? Pero ayaw nila. All right. Now, on the other hand, this is the enlightenment I want to seek. Mahigpit sila. On the other hand, dito sa atin, UAAP and NCAA allow imports to the detriment of the local players. Ngayon, siguro to help, that's because it was Ambassador Danding Kuwako na pauso nung araw niyan eh. Sila Chip, sila Chip England,
Yes.
to help to help upgrade the sport of basketball as far as the Pilipinas are concerned. Pero it doesn't happen all the time. Just as a reminder, in 2019, Letran became the NCAA champion, no import. All the other schools had an import. Letran did not have one. No import, no problem. That was the T-shirt. That was we were wearing on our T-shirts. We were champions. So what's the beef? Ano man problema sa mga import? Kung pwede mag-import, kaya mo mag-import. Kung hindi ayaw nyo lang completely, wala nang import. Don't you think so, gentlemen? May I pick your mind, Senator Gordon and Senator Angara?
Mr. President, may I add to the discussion with the permission of the two gentlemen?
Is that an import point of view, Your Honor?
No, this is yes.
From Spain.
No, from my father's point of view. My father was in the championship. He was in two back-to-back championship winning team of LaSalle. They beat Ateneo 2 times with his teammate Kurt Bachman, Joe Subiri, Kurt Bachman. Yun yung grupo nila noon. And they beat Ateneo 2 times back-to-back. And I was very proud of that. That's what he always tells Tito Dick whenever he sees Senator Gordon. But and who was cheering them on was Monico Pontevella at that time. Because Monico was with LaSalle. But at that time, Mr. President, it was very exciting and there were no imports. It was purely all Filipino players. I wish that they could go back to do that. That's true. No import, no problem, Mr. President. But truly, that is more of a I'd say not a rule. It's not the rule. It's a special outcome rather than the rule. But whenever there's a good import, talagang nado-dominate ng basketball team because if you look at the scores of the imports, Mr. President, you look at their scores, they're numbering up to 30, 40 points and everybody else is 5 points, 6 points. So talagang ibinibigay sa import lahat ng bola at hindi na po naglalaro minsan yung mga locals. Maganda sana, all local na lang. Wala na pong import. Yan ang pinakamaganda. That's a nice UAAP. Just like how my dad used to play before for NCAA in those days. There were no imports. Yung matatangkad lang doon, yung mga mistiso. Yung mga galing Subic, yung Pilipino galing Subic at Clark. Yun yung mga Pilipino noon na magagaling, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Gordon, go ahead.
He's on mute, Mr. President. Yeah.
Mr. President, I can't help but smile, snicker, and laugh at the suggestion of Senator Subiri that we were beaten twice. I think they had a guy by the name of Kurt Bachman, who was really a German, but he was very, very tall. And his mother was on the bench, and one time they were playing Mapua, and Charlie Batyon elbowed him in the stomach, and the mother came out with an umbrella chasing after Kurt. Levity aside, Mr. President. I am from Letran also, and that's why I was very, very proud of that Letran team that was importless. So it can be done, and it's even a bigger victory. And by the way, to my good friend Senator Zubiri, after we were beaten twice,
we had an import by the name of Chris Arroyo from Bicol, and Lasal was already playing their anthem when Bobby Litawa took a shot from the center and made it overtime. And then in the overtime, Ateneo won at the last second by a follow-up by Chris Arroyo. And when he was interviewed by the great Jake Romero, he said, "What happened to you out there? That was a spectacular shot." And he said in his Bicol, "I cramps." I cramps. But you see, it really depends on the kind of players that we get. And I agree with President Soto that you can win games without an import. And we did that in 1953. We placed third, but third is still third, not first. And maybe, hopefully, with the help, a little help from our friends, we can be first. Like I said, I'm open, Mr. President, to whatever the UAAP says. That is a collegiate board, and they can make a decision. I dare say that it would fall under the unequal protection of laws if we do not allow Kwame to play, or if you do not allow Ateneo to get an import, because the rules are clear. So long as you don't move the goalposts to satisfy or to benefit even our team, UP, or for that matter, Letran, I would rather keep it the way it is, and let's see what happens afterwards. Anyway, it's an evolving and continually changing process. Thank you. Thank you. And with apologies to my good friend, not Mr. Subiri, but the father, Mr. Subiri.
Mr. President, if I may.
With the permission of Senator
With the
Gordon and
permission of
Senator
my
Guerra.
distinguished colleagues. Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead,
President.
Senator Villanueva.
From the champions of the 1990s, from UST Tigers, Mr. President, and we were champions for 4 straight years without the import, Mr. President. But let me just put on record and spread into the records why it is important also, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, why we need outside local players in developing the sport of basketball here in the country. It has evolved for so many years. If you look at other countries, they're doing it. In fact, for example, Serge Ibaka became a Spanish citizen so that he can also represent the Spanish basketball team. And we have done that before, Mr. President. And I think the UAAP is also doing the same thing so that we'll be able to cope up with the changing development of the sports of sport of basketball, Mr. President. That's why I think it is important, but it has to be highly regulated, Mr. President. And that's what UAAP is doing, Mr. President. If you have a player who is outside the category of being a local player, then you become extra special, Mr. President. A team cannot use two outside local players inside the basketball court, Mr. President. They can have as many as they want, but there will only be one basketball player who is not local playing inside the basketball court. Just to put that in perspective, Mr. President, so we can continue discussing this particular matter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'd like to thank the gentleman from Bulacan, who's one of, or probably the most skilled basketball player in the Senate, in the Senate right now. But going back, we thank him for his contribution, and I'd like to add, he mentioned that Spain naturalized Serge Ibaka, who's of African descent. Even the world powers like the US naturalized players like Hakeem Olajuwon, and I think even Tim Duncan, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. President. So it just goes to show that if we don't play the game as the great powers of the game play it, then we will get left behind, firstly, Mr. President. And secondly, you asked about the FIBA rules and why there are imports. And I congratulate Letran. That was really a legendary stint of that team, I think. And I think it's a raging debate whether to have imports in collegiate leagues. I think the NCAA, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. President, has decided against it, whereas the UAAP has decided to limit it to one import per team. And in doing so, I think the UAAP is trying to balance what Senator Joel said, which is to benefit from our locals sort of lifting all boats, Your Honor, by having skilled players from overseas play, then you have that free market where everyone gets to partake, and because of the superior skills perhaps of some of these individuals, some of our local big men would also improve. I think there's no denying that someone like June Marva Fajardo or Japet Aguilar has benefited by playing against or practicing against someone like Marcos Dautit and Andre Blatch, Mr. President. And with regard to the FIBA rule, which is why they limit it also, they have that peculiar rule where the rule is that there's only one, number one, there must only be one import or naturalized player. And for that naturalized player to play as a local, he must have gotten his passport before the age of 16. I think they're trying to prevent an unregulated and all-out arms race between countries, especially the wealthier ones, like the Arab countries. They can naturalize 10 players overnight, Mr. President. Someone like Qatar or maybe the United Arab Emirates, and then we would really suffer. So I think what they're trying to do is strike a balance between having the best individuals all over the world pit their skills against other skilled individuals, while at the same time ensuring that money does not play an overwhelming role in having some sort of parity or equality among the combatants or competitors, Mr. President. And that's also what I was alluding to in my questions to the gentleman from Zambales, and he has put forth some very strong arguments, which I may not necessarily agree with, but I appreciate his logic. I appreciate his reasoning, and perhaps we may never see eye to eye on this subject, Mr. President. But I feel it is well within the powers of UAAP to provide some kind of rule which would be similar to having a level playing field, not tilting it towards the overly moneyed teams, overly aggressive teams. And so I think that would be a good policy. I think it would be legal, given that the UAAP is a private a league free to provide its own rules. And so long, the gentleman is correct, these rules must be prospective and must be prospective in their application to be fair, Mr. President. So I think he's made this point. I think I thank the chamber for giving me a chance to make mine, and I hope the UAAP will pass that rule, because it would be truly unfair, and I think it would be to the detriment of fair play and good competition in a league which we really enjoy. And it would be a shame if we would tilt the scales in favor of one team immensely, which we may be doing at the moment. But of course, it's an unforeseen circumstance, Mr. President. And So I think I'll just stop it. I'll stop there, Mr. President, and I thank the gentleman from Zambales for his very gracious responses to my queries, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, gentleman from Zambales. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a point, Mr. President, about money. I've been a cheerleader of Ateneo for 8 years, and I remember that whether money was an issue. We did have people who tutored the players, and certainly when you talk about the United States, all these guys, Jordan, all the young guys, in fact, they have been lured to play for basketball teams, college teams, with some resources, Mr. President. But lately, ang nakakatakot and I don't want that to happen to us, is they go to play in the NBA even at a very early age. And certainly all these players like Kai Soto later on will play back for us, or for that matter, that player from the Mavericks, Luka, he can, and then you have that big guy from France in Utah. And we also utilize, for example, our own Jordan Clarkson, Mr. President. So it somehow levels up, and I think I think we should leave it up to the UP in the case of the Philippines to determine what's going to happen, because I've seen the Korean teams, they also have American players with the Korean ancestry, and the Indonesians the same thing. But it's a very, very growing and very competitive sport. And I thank the gentleman from Aurora. I thought that those questions were very prescient and certainly gives us some more room to think about it and try to come out with the best possible scenario so that young players who are not as tall may be able to play. And certainly I congratulate Senator from Bulacan for being one of the best ball players in the country in basketball. And certainly he has a lot of good things to say. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Right, Senator Tolentino is asking for the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. If the good sponsor would yield to some, at least 3 or 4 questions.
Willingly, Your Honor, willingly.
Mr. President, I'm in full support of this measure. In fact, if we can do more, we should recruit more. In passing, I mentioned the name of, I will mention the name of Sage Tolentino from Hawaii, who's now playing for Auburn University, first U.S. NCAA Division I, but we failed to give him a passport when he turned 16 last year, although he's been on the radar since he was 14 or 13. But just my questions would run like this. Is the gentleman aware of Mars Perseverance journey? Our rover, the rover that now landed in Mars, February 19. Not our rover, but the U.S. NASA rover. Well, to shorten this, there is a big NASA mission to Mars. It's as big as an SUV, and the parachute before it landed was as big as a football field. That Perseverance Mars journey will take them for almost a decade, sorting out the rocks and finding life on Mars. It's as big as an SUV. Mr. President, it turned out, Mr. President, that 2 of the leading engineers in that Mars sojourn were Filipinos. One from Baguio, the name is Engineer Gregorio Villar III, and then another Filipina engineer Genevieve Yang, and a lot probably of other sub-actors there with Filipino heritage. I'm saying this, Mr. President, because it really pains us to see a lot of Filipino talents wasted. And if the gentleman would refresh his memory, is probably familiar with the basketball player by the name of Jackie Animan. Mr. President, are you aware of Jackie Animan? Jackie Animan is a lady basketball player who played for Gilas women's team before. Is now the #1 basketball player in Taiwan. And at the rate she's going, there is a big possibility that she might be converted into a Taiwanese citizen if we're not cautious enough. She's the #1 player now of Shi University in Taiwan. Is a superstar now in Taiwan, and we hope to have her back. And probably my third question, if the good gentleman will not answer, I will answer it for him. Is he aware of the name Wesley So, chess player? You're on mute, sir.
Controller. Yes, I'm aware of Wesley So, and what a tragedy as far as I'm concerned. He wants to play for the U.S. because, according to him, we did not give him enough support here. That's
yes, you're correct, Mr. President. Wesley So is from Bacoor. I studied in St. Francis College in Bacoor, and I might reveal this as well. During my days as Metro Manila chairman, I used to provide him some allowance when he would drop by my office. It was intermittent. When I was there, and I was not there, probably he would come and nobody would tend to him. Apparently, Wesley So is a genius, and then migrated to the United States. He's now playing for Webster University, and just 2 days ago, Mr. President, he was given U.S. citizenship. He is the #1 player of the US team insofar as chess is concerned, and number 2 player chess in the world, grandmaster with the highest FIDE rating in the United States, but from Bacoor, Cavite. We lost him. We lost him because I heard you're discussing money matters a while ago, because we lost him probably because there was no enthusiasm insofar as our sports groups are concerned for his peculiar genius in the chessboard. And that pains us also, Mr. President. And probably the good gentleman is aware of the name Xian Chambers, Mr. President. You know? Xian Chambers is a former import in the PBA, played for Alaska for several years here. After that...
Sean Chambers.
Yes.
Sean Chambers, yes.
Xian Chambers, after that University of Santo Tomas controversy in Sorsogon, would want to come over and be a Filipino and play and coach the University of Santo Tomas, volunteering his services. I'm saying this, Mr. President. We have lost a lot of opportunities, and my point here is that, is it possible for the good sponsor and some of our other colleagues, if we just frame a general administrative law that would net capture all of our prospects, whether it be in chess, basketball, gymnastics, and even retrieve back our scientists, those part of the Mars Perseverance Program, retrieve back probably Wesley So. And I would not be surprised, Mr. President, after the end of COVID-19, there probably would be 2 Filipino or 3 Filipino physicians or chemists part of that COVID-19 vaccine laboratory team, Mr. President. So is the good sponsor amenable to the crafting of a general measure that would, instead of just handpicking individual good sports prospects, but would have a lesser demanding procedural administrative law that would get all of this? I'm saying this, Mr. President, because for the next PBA draft, we lost 6 PhilAms because of the burdens imposed by the Bureau of Immigration, the Department of Justice. And these are mere paperworks. So is the good sponsor willing to craft? I will be honored to be a co-author of a general administrative law that would allow us to get talents abroad and redeem back Filipino athletes and scientists.
May I answer, Mr. President? I think the questions are quite, the observations are quite telling, and I commend the gentleman from Cavite, my kababayan, that he made these observations. Mr. President, where would America be if it were not a nation of immigrants? I mean, America draws on the best of other countries, and recycles them into American citizens, Mr. President. They've been doing that all along. Even the state of Israel, where would the state of Israel be had it not opened its borders to all of the Jews in Europe who suffered from the Holocaust, Mr. President? And Canada is doing exactly the same thing. All these things about immigration that becomes issues in America with Trump, or for that matter, trying to veer away from the other countries that try to liberalize immigration, is really more economical than anything else. Economical for the people who want to go to a land of plenty, an economic threat for those who live in America because they will lose their jobs to somebody better, Mr. President. I would like to remind everybody also that France won the World Cup in football in 2018, I think it is. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember I was in France at that time with Ambassador Saide, and they won it with immigrants, Mr. President, some of whom began to coach in Spain in one of the best teams in Spain. So, Mr. President, it really all depends on the philosophy that we want, and I would be certainly hazard to try and come up with a change in our citizenship and immigration laws, provided that the citizens that we're going to get, prospective citizens we're going to get, will not just be beneficial to us in sports, but in the sciences, for that matter, and for professors. Where would the Philippines be if the Thomasites had not gone into the Philippines and taught in our country in the turn of the century? And certainly, as we approach the 500 years of Spain, where would we be if it were not for the relatives of Senator President Soto and Senator Zubiri? Just kidding, Mr. President. Because they were able to come here either as sons of the friars or whatever. But I'm just kidding, of course. But you know, whether you like it or not, as we celebrate our 500 years, there have been many people of the Iberian Peninsula who arrived here, and really, it's something that I think we ought to think about. It created an administrative machinery for the entire country, and we were able to call ourselves Islas Filipinas. And if memory serves correct, they even brought Nueva Filipinas in Texas, Mr. President. They were using Nueva Filipinas there, but then I'm going straying already. But the point is, I agree with Senator Tolentino. It is a spark of vision that I think we should do, and try to come up with something that we can adjust so that we are able to attract the best and the brightest. When you look at the Statue of Liberty, Mr. President, it says, "Give me your tired, your hobbled masses." You know, all the poor of other countries coming to the United States, and that enriched the United States. In fact, they even use them as cannon fodder. I mean, I am not insulting them, but you will know that many of them serve in the military. For example, Senator Inoue served in Europe as an Japanese American soldier, and later on won the Congressional Medal of Honor too late. But these are the things that make a nations. Nations are made of many other countries and nationalities, and who's to say at the beginning of the world had a lot of wandering, itinerant people who would go to other countries. It's really just a question of fear. It's always fear that makes us decisions problematic. I hope I was able to answer, and I would appreciate the help of my good friend Senator Tolentino if he would help me with this. I think these are times that we must consider that global citizenship is upon us. I believe the president of Pfizer is not an American. I believe the president of Moderna or AstraZeneca is not an American, but these are global corporations that are run by people from other nationalities, Mr. President, and eventually become American in the end. So from sports to science to education, and even to outer space, Mr. President. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions, Mr. President. I fully support this measure. In the same manner, Senator Angara is very supportive of this measure, and I feel his spirit that he wants more players of the calibers of Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal in the near future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are no other members who wish to interpolate. However, there are
Mr.
proposals for amendments. Oh,
Yeah,
may we recognize
if I may,
Senator Joel, Mr. President.
before,
Villanueva.
thank you, Mr. President, with the indulgence of our majority leader. I know that we are about to close the period of interpellation, and this representation will no longer ask any question, but let me just spread into the records that I thought that it is important, and we were able to tackle that issue raised by our dear colleague, Senator Sani Angara, that this particular measure may be legal and we can defend it in Plaza Miranda, but I hope to raise again the importance of ensuring that this would also be fair to all the parties concerned, Mr. President. And I'm glad that we were able to tackle it this afternoon, considering, Mr. President, that and I will no longer hide my feelings, Mr. President. We were on the other side of the fence when Ateneo de Manila University routed the UST Growling Tigers in the last UAAP season. And if you look at the team of Ateneo in the UAAP in the last UAAP season, as a basketball player, Mr. President, I know for a fact that they are really a team to beat. And in fact, as I was sharing with our colleagues here in the Senate, it would be very hard, even for professional basketball teams in the PBA, to beat Ateneo de Manila. But can you just imagine, Mr. President, what would happen if Ateneo decides to get another player outside the local community, or the local a local cager, Mr. President, who would play alongside with Kwame, Mr. President. So I could just imagine what would happen and how dominating they would be in the coming UAAP season. But again, I thank the gentleman from Zambales for being very open to discussions, and I thank the gentleman from Aurora for raising this issue. I thank the gentleman from Cavite. Despite the fact that Washington Wizards are not winning, he's still very passionate in ensuring that sports development will indeed happen in our beloved country. Thank you, Mr. President, and I submit to the wisdom of the body.
All right, Senator Gordon.
Just one last point, a brief one, Mr. President. Mr. President, that same Ateneo team, together with UP players such as Paras and such as the two brothers, the Leaño brothers, and players from LaSalle and from UE, if I'm not mistaken, they beat everybody and they placed third in the Taiwan Jones Cup, Mr. President. To my mind, it can only enrich our game, and that's why it has already been enriched by the fact that they were able to hold their own, even beat Taiwan twice, Mr. President, in that league. So, to my mind, I think it is important, yung sinabi ni Senator Tolentino, that we start thinking in a more liberal and open way. Mr. President, Jafet Aguilar was recruited by the Ateneo from the province. So also was Slaughter, Mr. President. And in the old days, Loizaga, I believe, was recruited along with Boni Carbonell in Mindanao, in Davao, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. President. And Buddy Badion was recruited in Cavite. So all this recruitment comes to play, and all in the spirit of capability and competition and fighting hard will they succeed, Mr. President. There was even a player, Nano Tolentino, from Rizal, who used to play also with the national team with Loizaga. So really, Mr. President, the moral of the story is, let us feed our people better, let us make them study better, and let us give them all the necessary accoutrements to rise, not just to win medals and give them money, but to provide them, as Senator Tolentino gave Wesley Saw some allowances, which I did also to Glenda Padrigo when she was a young chess player. I did the same thing, and with Johnny Revilla, you will recall, some of you will no longer remember him. He was a black Filipino-American who played for Mapua and the national team. And we also, my family supported him, Mr. President. So the long and the short of it is, we have to support our people. And I thank Senator Angara for his, again, presence of mind, Senator Tolentino, Senator Villanueva, and all the others. I'm sure Senator Dillon, and certainly Senator Soto, who is very much aware, the Senate President is very much aware of the goings and the comings and goings of Philippine sports. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr.
Senator
President.
Gordon. Jordi Leader, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, on my part, Mr. President, no, I really wish that no, we will be able to pass this, and we will be able to add to the Gilas team a naturalized Filipino who can play for us with the likes of Ange Kwame, and that'll be great for the team. However, my heart bleeds for my UP Maroons because now Ateneo will be unbeatable with one naturalized player and one import. And I believe not only UP Maroons will be bleeding, but also the UST, ano po yung tawag sa kanila bago sila maging Tigers? UST Bluebells? Ano ba yung sabi ni Senator Gordon dati?
It's growling tigers. Growling. Growling
Hindi.
tigers.
Yung sa panahon ni Senator Gordon, anong tawag sa kanila, Senator Gordon?
During Senator
Goldies,
Gordon's time,
goldies.
it's a golden,
Goldies.
Glowing goldies.
The glowing goldies. So, yeah.
I like that better because that sounds rich.
Baka ang problema, baka pagalitan tayo ng mga ibang eskwelahan. So,
Mga Dominicano.
Pero anyway, for the
Malakas
record,
kami ni Senate President Soto dyan. Dominicano rin kami.
oo nga eh. But for the record, Mr. President, no, we are doing this so that we can add more strength and might to the Philippine Gilas team. First and foremost, to represent us in our international circuit, international competitions, Mr. President. Yun nga lang, sana maawa na lang yung Ateneo sa amin, mga ibang teams, at sana naman out of propriety ay hindi naman nila i-field palagi yung dalawa magkasabay, at maawa na lang sila sa mga mortals ng iba't ibang universities. But with that said, Mr. President, I believe no other member wishes to interpolate. I move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, there's just a request. No, I've had two requests from two of our colleagues if they can study the measure lang for possible amendment, if that is all right with the sponsor. For tomorrow, we can take this up again. Anyway, if we pass it tomorrow on second reading, it will still be approved on third reading on Monday. So there will be no difference, Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Gordon. So with that,
All right.
Mr. President, I move to suspend. May we recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
President, no objection, Mr. President, and I hope we can pass it because I think they will be playing. I think Senator Sani Angara. When will the Gilas game start? I think last week of March, right? Or first week of April? 22. Is that March 22? Well, there you go. So let's just try and make sure we pass it tomorrow.
Yeah, I believe it's March 22 or March 23, Your Honor, Mr. President. And that's why my staff is drafting an amendment, which we will coordinate with your staff to shorten the usual period for effectivity, the effectivity clause, Your Honor. I think we did that in the past, where we shorten it. So right after publication, you don't have the customary 15 days, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Well, from the very beginning of this interpellation, I already said yes to your amendment. We already studied it together. Thank you. Thank you.
Sayang po, sana yun din ang amendment natin kay Maranyon because I believe Maranyon as a game.
We can reopen, Mr. President. Why don't we reopen it and then I'll propose the amendment? But tomorrow, tomorrow. 24 hours. We have 24 hours.
I can make a reconsideration. Yes, since I voted in favor of it. That's correct.
Yeah. Since, as you said, it doesn't matter if it's today or tomorrow. It's still Monday for third reading. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct, Mr. President.
All right, you can do that tomorrow.
Thank you. So with that, Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1892, House Bill 8632.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just have a couple of housekeeping measures before we adjourn. Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, Senate Bill number 1969. This is the CCF Life Academy Foundation, Inc. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred. Senator Gordon recognized.
Yes, Mr. President.
I just would like to ask whether the Senate Legal Office has already made the study on the issue involving the judicial marshals so that we can have that passed, Mr. President.
Yes, I am informed that they have, and they have already forwarded to your office. Di ba? We will forward. They will forward to your office today. or within
Thank you, Mr.
the
President.
next
Thank you.
day. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
And may we also request the good distinguished gentleman from Zambales, the chairperson of the Committee on Justice. Baka sir, Tito Dick, pwede na natin matackle din yung statutory rape. Increasing statutory rape. It's Women's Day today. Baka maganda naman sa mga kababaihan, increase na natin yung statutory rape kung pwede po.
But the statutory rape applies to all genders, Mr.
Yes,
President.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Once, yes, that's true. That's
I'm
true.
trying very hard. I'm trying very hard to convince myself that we should try to make it more stringent than it should. But I will put it out, Mr. President, and leave it to the floor to decide. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So last housekeeping measure, Mr. President, I move to transfer from the Committee on Health and Demography to the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship as the primary committee and the Committee on Health and Demography as the secondary committee the following Senate bills. Senate Bill number 496, Senate Bill number 541, Senate Bill number 1183, and Senate Bill number 197. These are all have to do with e-cigarette regulation, Mr. President.
All right. They are hereby transferred.
And we move also that Senate Bill number 197 also be referred to the Committee on Finance as a tertiary committee. Mr.
Tertiary
President.
Committee, Finance. Yes. Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With that, with no other topics for today, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, March 9, 2021. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, March 9, 2021.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.